Hey, everybody. Welcome to Adapter Parish, episode 99, Les Miserables, part 2. As always, we've got a lot to get through today, so I won't take much more of your time here, but I do want to acknowledge that it's not lost on us that 99 episodes seems pretty unreal, and the kind words and support that we've had from so many of our listeners has made it a genuine pleasure. And prepare to hear us say all of that again, but louder, when we release episode 100 in 2 weeks. Today, we're finishing up our look at non-musical adaptations of Les Miserables with 6 more from 1978 to 2018. Then, in 2 weeks, on Tuesday, September 7th, we'll be wrapping up this 3-part look with an episode all about something that's both just a heck of a dang musical and also something very near and dear to our hearts, Les Mis. We'll be discussing the stage musical, the filmed performances, and the 2012 movie musical. That's in 2 weeks. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode or any others that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/adaptcast. We've got a patron-only community and our bi-weekly bonus show, Adapter Parish Plus, with episodes releasing every Tuesday between episodes of this show. We hope you check it out. Show notes from this and all other episodes can be found at adapterparishcast.com. And with that, on with the show, Adapter Parish, episode 99, Les Miserables, part 2. Hello, and welcome to Adapter Parish, podcast about adaptation. I'm Jeremy Latour.
I'm Ari Lipshaw, and welcome to Les Mis Part 2.
I can't remember if we talked about this in episode 1, because I can't remember everything we talked about in episode 1, but I will say this.
No one can.
It's a heck of a lot to have to go through Les Miserables now 12 times.
Literally 12.
Well, 13. We read the book, and that was really,
God.
really long.
It was
You
very
heard episode 1. If you
haven't, this is a weird time to start.
Yeah, because we're not going to talk about Valjean's story, because why would we talk about Valjean's story?
Yeah,
we talked about it for a long time.
Go back, listen to the other episode.
Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that it's a fucking bummer to watch Gavroche die 12 times.
Yeah, the first time he
11
died,
times.
you did, I think we said this in the first episode, but you pointed out to me, you're going to watch this cute kid die a million times.
That's a lot. Here we are, episode 2. We are finishing up with all of the, let's call them standard adaptations. So we're starting in 1978, and we're making our way all the way to 2018. And that's going to bring us up to the present. And then in episode 3, we can move on to Le Musical.
Le Musical. And we're not gonna sing in this episode?
I make no promises.
All right.
I said that in episode 1, and then someone gave us a little feedback that I should sing when my heart tells me to sing.
I mean, that someone was not me.
No, I was a listener.
But as your co-host, I feel like I have veto. I'm just saying.
Here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
I get. No, hang on. I know where you're coming from. You're literally sitting here. You're thinking about how this night is going to go. And you're just thinking to yourself, how can I now allow this man?
Oh, God. What I'm saying is, if there's someone out there who's like, I don't enjoy the musical, I don't like it, I love the book Les Mis, and I can never talk about my love for the book Les Mis and its many, many, many adaptations without someone talking about the Ding Dang musical, I feel like these episodes could be for you, because we're not doing the musical until episode 3. And I want that person to be able to listen to these episodes with clear eyes and a full heart. I think we can probably hold it together for episode 2. Then when we get to episode 3, all bets are off.
So we're back. Got a lot of stuff to talk about. Listen to episode 1. Again, if you skipped it and you're listening now, that's a weird choice.
It's a very strange choice.
And I don't support it.
I don't support it.
I support a lot of choices that people make. I don't support that choice. Would you like to get started with the 1978 TV movie of Les Miserables?
I think we better have.
Here we sit, moving our way from all of these beautiful, long epics that have given us time with the characters. And now we get to 1978 with a TV movie that aired on CBS on December 27th. It was directed by Glenn Jordan. It was written by John Gay. And it starred Richard Jordan as Jean Valjean.
Any relation?
No relation. Specifically, no relation. I did read that. Richard Jordan's he's a really good guy. He's in one of my favorite movies of all time, Hunt for Red October, and Anthony Perkins as Javert.
Yeah. I guess, spoiler alert, we did not think he was very good in this.
I don't think he's bad in it. He showed up and he did the best he could.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's miscast in this.
His accent work, I think, in anything we've seen him in is not amazing.
No.
Yeah. It was different from a lot of the other versions that we watched in terms of the story structure, and also because it was clearly made with $1.
But like, it was made with $20.
Yeah, like $20.
Like a lot of money for a TV movie.
Yeah.
It feels like a prestige TV movie, but it feels like a TV movie.
But they just made a lot of really interesting / weird choices about like what to cut and what not to cut in the script. So I remember we were watching, so this was like a TV, was it movie length or was it more of a mini series length? Look, I don't even remember how long it was.
It's movie length.
It's movie length. And we were like, I don't know, 45 minutes into it. And we were like, he's just now escaping from jail. We have a lot to get to. What are they going to do? And the thing that they did was cut a very major plot line and some very major characters in favor of more Valjean in prison stuff, which I just thought was an unusual choice.
Well, I think it was pretty clear what they were trying to do, because the thing that became clear to us as we were watching it is that what the filmmakers valued was the Valjean-Javert relationship.
Yeah.
You know, this is hero versus nemesis, that kind of thing. And if that's your goal, they did a good job of doing that.
They made it super personal.
And that's why we spend so much time in prison, because he and Javert get to know each other over the course of years before he ever escapes. Oh, that's the other thing, too. He never gets released.
Yeah, he only escapes.
He only ever escapes.
It makes a surprising difference if he's like, he's an escaped felon and that's the reason they're looking for him versus like, no, they let him out, but they think he broke his parole. I don't know. I guess now that saying it like that doesn't sound like it's that big of a difference, but now having seen a dozen of these, I guess I feel like it makes a difference.
No, I think it does make a difference.
Okay.
So I think one of the things that became really clear about this one is I don't think they got the book.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the points that Hugo was making in his book is that when Valjean is released from prison, he should be respected at this point because he did his time. He's now a free man.
He's paid his debt to society.
But even in this world, even for someone who has paid 20 years for stealing a loaf of bread, I remember because it was entered into evidence.
Right.
We also see the trial in this one.
Yeah. Oh, I think we see his sister. We see everything.
Yeah.
We see him as a young man for so long.
We can come back to that.
We'll come back to it.
But the thing is, he still can't escape being a convict, even though he is technically free.
Right.
And that's like one of Valjean's big conflicts in the beginning of the story is that he's being told on the one hand that he's free, but on the other hand, what he's actually experiencing is that he's anything but.
Yeah, and that's, as you say, that's the point of the 1,400-page book. Like, that's what Victor Hugo is trying to do and say. And that's the point of that quote that's in every single version except this one, by the way. I don't think the quote was in this one.
Yeah.
As long as these things keep happening, as long as, you know, we put... I'm paraphrasing substantially.
You're paraphrasing the English, which is itself a translation.
But basically, as long as we keep putting people into this system, breaking them down, and then throwing them back into society with no resources, these things will keep happening, which is extremely prescient and true literally up to the present day. So, you know, it is interesting because you could do a very, very modern thing with that moral of the story. That's not limited to 19th century France. But yeah, if he's escaped, then you don't need to like look further into his story and his journey than like, oh, he's escaped. You know, he's on the run. He's hiding.
It also makes Javert less interesting because that's Javert's whole thing, which is, I know you're free, but I know you're still a convict.
Yes.
I know that you still have this in you and you're never going to escape this. That's a complex thing for a character to believe, which is why the whole journey that Javert goes through at the end is based on that.
Yeah.
But in this one, anyone would think that he's still a convict because he escaped.
Yeah.
I thought this one was really fun.
Yeah.
I thought the first half of this was just fun. Yeah, it made a lot of changes, but it had a really fun, intense energy to it. And I'm always looking for something like that. But then halfway through runs out of steam and the problems get way too big.
Yeah. I mean, I had a whole run in the first episode about what I'm looking for in a Javert that I won't repeat here. But basically, Javert has to be really conflicted. He can't just be like, no, you're a criminal and I'm the police and I'm going to catch you and I hate you because we had this personal conflict. It has to be deeper than that. Can I just say a couple other things about this version?
Yeah.
comedy beards and wigs, like
Yes.
throughout. I mean, the whole first half with the convicts, like he's just getting older and older,
Yeah.
Valjean, and his beard and his hair are getting longer and longer until finally they get to the point where it's like, you know, the hermit in Monty Python's Life of Brian?
Yes.
That his beard is so long that he's naked, but it covers his whole body.
Mhm.
That's what the beards and hair look like in this.
Yeah.
They're just like comically long. And so it's very hard to take it seriously when he's like in this beard. And then he escapes, right? And he's like running around and like trying to find shelter and trying to do this and trying to do that. And it's like, dude, get a knife, cut your hair. Like a very easy way to disguise yourself. And also very conspicuous if you're looking for an escaped convict, looking for a guy with this like floor length flowing locks and beard.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
I only have 3 things to say.
Okay.
I'll try to make them all quick. One, you know, we mentioned that they actually show his original trial. It seems like they cast him to be that age.
Oh, yes, because he's young and handsome.
Right. He's way too young the entire time. And I
Yeah.
feel like the thing with Valjean, if you're going to, because he's multiple ages, first of all, you don't have to show him at the trial because
Yeah.
the book doesn't even show him at the trial.
Yeah.
So he needs to be the age when he's released from prison. Then he needs to be the age several years later when he's Monsieur Madeleine.
Right.
Then he needs to be an age several years after that when he's old and, you know, Cosette has grown up
Right,
and
right,
they're
right.
living in Paris. Then you have to show him like dying.
Yeah.
And I feel like the good age to shoot for is that middle one.
Yeah.
Because you can take someone who's right for Monsieur Madeleine and you can age them down a little bit
Yeah.
for when they get out of prison and then age them up a little bit for later. But if you're shooting for that kind of original trial, I don't think you can really age them up the 30 years that you need to
No.
and make it look good.
No, you can't. And you could. And I think the Gerard Depardieu version like did this a little bit did you say it was his son?
I'm pretty sure. I seem to remember. Again, we watched a lot of these.
Yeah, a
and
lot.
We'll get to the Depardieu one. I believe they cast his son as a younger version of
Yeah.
Valjean. That's
so,
what
like,
I remember.
You could very easily cast a younger actor. You don't have to have 45 playing 20.
Yeah.
Especially because like that, like ideally, I think, in my opinion, that first beginning part, if you have to show Valjean young, like should not be very extensive.
No.
And then you can show him as like the main actor, you know, to show the passage of time, you know, that he's been in prison a long time or whatever.
There's a lot of things you could do. But then the other 2 things I was going to say were both related to The Fugitive,
Yeah.
which actually never came up in episode number 1, but it was something we were talking about with each other constantly. Throughout of these.
I didn't kill my wife.
It's so many times when he's in the sewer and like Javert's after
Yeah,
him, it's
yeah.
just Dr. Richard Kimball. The third thing I was going to say is that an interesting connection to The Fugitive. Obviously, a lot of people have tried to connect Les Mis to The Fugitive. Richard Jordan, our Valjean, was gonna play the bad guy in The Fugitive, but he was too sick and he
Oh.
died,
Oh, bless
which
him.
was really sad. And so they had to cast that other guy, whose name I can't remember, because he got that weird accent. You
Oh,
know?
yeah. Well, I thought you were making a joke because I thought you were talking about the Tommy Lee Jones character. And I was
No.
like, haha, because you just mentioned Tommy Lee Jones, but you mean the other doctor.
The
like,
bad guy.
The bad guy.
Tommy Lee Jones he's the antagonist, but
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
not
yeah.
the bad guy.
Right.
So I just feel like you can make a lot of connections to The Fugitive, but you brought it up before, like comical beard. Just shave.
Just shave.
Just do the Richard Kimball.
Yeah.
And just shave.
Just shave.
You look totally different.
It's fine.
There's so many things you could do.
So many.
Get a pair of glasses.
A mustache to show the passage of time.
I feel like it's a thing that came up constantly while we were watching these. You were like, why doesn't Valjean ever become a master of disguise?
Yeah, I did
He's in
say
it-
that. He
he's-
has so much time.
He is-
And he's just running around Paris looking like himself the whole time.
It's kind of, it doesn't bear thinking because then you start to get into stuff like that.
I guess, you know, again, like kind of speaking of the hair and makeup budget in this, I guess it kind of all went to Fantine because she looks rough.
Oh, yeah, super
Oh
rough.
my God. Fantine looks like the exorcist in this. It is awful.
Well, she looks like the one who needs the
The one
exorcism.
who needs the exorcism.
So
Yeah.
when you say she looks like the exorcist,
looks
means
like-
she looks like an old man.
She looks like a character from the movie The Exorcist who needs an exorcism. And it's funny because we literally just now we were like flipping through some pictures of this version just to refresh ourselves. And I turned away for a second and I turned back and there she was. And I was like, like it actually terrified me momentarily.
This was an actor by the name of Angela Pleasance, who
Yeah.
is Donald Pleasance's daughter.
Yeah.
And you know what? When they've got her looking real rough, she looks a lot like Donald Pleasance.
Like old Donald Pleasance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess the only other thing, well, I had one other big thing, which was a big plot change and a big missing character in this that we need to talk about.
Sure.
I just want to make my joke.
Do your joke.
Well, they were talking, it was the nuns. And I was like, oh, these nuns are like really out and about. Like these aren't really cloistered nuns in this version. They're out on the town. They're like going shopping. They're doing this. They're doing that. And you were like, yeah, well, a nun has to see the world before she like goes back and retreats into the convent.
This
And
is a pretty good joke.
I said, oh, like a nun springer?
It's a very good joke.
It was a really good joke. Do you want to talk about the major elephant in the room, big missing plot point in this version?
I mean, are you talking about the Thénardiers? You talking about Éponine?
I'm talking about the Thénardiers and Éponine being like not in it.
So this is like one huge problem that is represented in a number of different ways, because you do have, I just feel like you've got some great actors who are either miscast or wasted.
Yeah.
So as you say, Éponine does not appear.
Adult Éponine is not in it. That plot line is not there at all.
Valjean does go to get Cosette, and he does meet Madame Thénardier and Thénardier, and he talks to them. And it kills me because Thénardier is Ian Holm.
Yes.
And Ian Holm, in one scene, is acting circles around every other person in this movie.
Delivers the finest performance in this entire film.
And I'm talking about a movie that has John Gielgud in it.
Yeah.
But I'll come back to John in a second.
Please, Sir John.
Sir John, I'm so sorry. Ian Holm is incredible. This is a movie that has fine actors turning in some really wooden performances, just being basically unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like I found Anthony Perkins and Richard Jordan unbelievable in their parts.
Yeah.
They felt like actors playing a part. But then you have Ian Holm come in, and it's effortless how much he's just Thénardier.
It's not a broad Thénardier. It is a subtle performance. You know how sometimes we say someone's in a different movie because they're really over the top?
Yeah.
Like he's in a different movie because he's acting with subtlety. Like he's almost in like the 1998 big epic Hollywood movie.
Like it kills me that we don't get the trap.
Yeah.
You know, the big Thénardier trap.
Yeah.
It kills me that we don't get it with this Thénardier, because Ian Holm's so good.
Yeah. And so after Valjean comes, takes Cosette, we never see them again. That is over. The plot is done.
It is criminal.
Yeah.
So that never happens. We never see Éponine. But I just wanted to come back to Sir John for a second. I'm going to say a thing about John Gielgud. He is not good in this. He is, because he plays Gilles Normand. He plays Marius's grandfather.
Yeah.
And the problem is, Gilles Normand is a big character.
Yeah.
He's big on the page, and all of the versions we saw of him, they're all big characters. But Sir John comes in, and he's doing John Gielgud.
Yeah.
He's very subtle, and he's very quiet, and he's very wry, and it's completely wrong for the part.
Yeah.
He's the worst Gilles Normand that we saw in any version.
Yeah.
It kills me to say it.
The platonic ideal for me of Gilles Normand is the guy from like the 30s black and white French one.
Yeah.
Coming down the stairs like in his full like wig and white makeup and like his like knee pants and everything, just screaming, Marius! Marius!
Marius!
Marius! That's Gilles Normand for me.
This one I got angry at because I liked it so much, and then it just everything fell apart. And then let's end on this. Valjean gets a happy ending.
Yeah.
And Jean Valjean, who did not die.
He did not die.
I mean,
I guess
Javert
eventually,
dies.
he would.
We get another lame Javert death. I mean, that's not even worth really going into in this episode, because almost every single Javert death was pretty lame.
Oh, I remembered something else about drowning. Remember?
Yes.
Remember I was talking about there is some realism if you're wearing like heavy wool garments. They get sodden and very heavy, and like the water will just drag you down.
Right, and I tried to overrule that because it was devastating to my case.
The other thing, I was just remembering, this is the other thing about drowning. What happens is if you hit cold water, you involuntarily gasp, and then you have no air in your lungs. So like you go, and then you sink to the bottom. So like you are either gonna suck in water in doing that gasp, so you're immediately going to get air into your lungs and drown, or you're not going to be able to take like a good healthy breath before you hit the water, and you won't like have a lung full of air.
This got really dark.
Yeah.
I'm a little freaked out right now.
Yeah.
But I guess, and this one also has Fauchelevent. But shall we move on?
Yes, let's move on.
Okay, 1982. I was looking forward to this one more than I think almost any of them. Because here's the cool thing about 1982. 1982, there was a French movie. It's not one of these 6-hour epics. It was like a 3-hour movie.
It was like 3 hours.
Jean Valjean is Lino Ventura, who it's one of those things where was not super familiar with him because, maybe French cinema was kind of a blind spot to me, but like very well respected and was in a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Like lots and lots of movies. It was written by Alan Decaux. It was also co-written and directed by Robert Hossein. This is notable because 2 years earlier, he directed the very first stage production of the musical.
Yes.
in French.
Which is amazing as we watched this. And it was a good thing, I think, even though I don't want to bring comparisons to the musical too much into this episode, because we're going to do a whole episode just on the musical.
We have to deprive ourselves.
We have to deprive ourselves. Being fans of the musical, it was very interesting to see just some like visual stuff.
Yes.
That is, as far as I know, either from the musical or only in the musical. There were a couple of things that I was like, that's in the musical and we haven't seen that in any other version. So like, did Robert Hossein invent that and then he did it again in his non-musical film adaptation? It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I'll point them out as we go along.
But the other thing that was interesting too is that because I was kind of expecting it to be a lot like the musical, and it had moments like that,
Yeah.
but it also was really faithful to the book. And there's stuff in this that's not in the musical at all. So it seems like their whole thing when they were making it was, yes, I did the musical, I'm going to take some of that stuff, but really we need to be adapting the book right now.
Yeah, and that just seems like a guy that's really passionate about Les Misérables.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, this isn't like my full artistic vision. I want to do like the real adaptation.
Yes.
But also, I'm going to put Thénardier in a military outfit because I thought that was a really good idea when I had that for the musical.
Right?
Yeah.
We're assuming.
We're assuming
at this point. I do think it's worth mentioning. I think there were a few things that didn't work for us in this one.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get those out of the way. How do you feel about that?
Sure. I mean, I think the other thing very quickly that's worth mentioning is that we watched this in French with very poor user-generated subtitles that were partly in Greek.
Clearly, it was translated from the French to the Greek, and then someone translated from the Greek to the English.
So,
but all the proper names are in Greek.
If we missed some, we thought we were probably fine. But if we missed some subtlety somewhere in the dialogue, that would be why.
I think you can tell whether a performance is good.
Yeah, for sure.
Whether you understand what they're saying or not.
Yes.
To a certain extent. I don't know if I can get the little, the nuances of it, but I'm going to throw someone out, for example.
Yes.
And I don't want to, I feel bad about shitting on someone who was in a thing that I really like. I'm not sure what the goal was for Cosette in this one. She was maybe the most wooden performance we've seen in 12 versions. She has like no reaction to anything. And she's so stone-faced and dour the entire time. And it's not like she's dour because she feels trapped and has this inner life. And she has this, conflict with Valjean because he's keeping her locked up and she wants to get out and see the world. It's not coming from any of that because none of that is really in it at all.
Yeah.
Like when Marius finally meets her, like he's in love with her, but I don't really buy that why he would be in love with her other than she's very pretty.
Yeah.
And Javert was kind of the same thing. Guy named Michel Bouquet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was real stone cold in this one.
Yeah. And he was kind of like an older, kind of like puffy faced, white haired actor. Like he didn't look like Javert for me.
Yeah.
And then he didn't eliminate that prejudice that I had based on his appearance, like through the strength of his performance. Like I didn't think he looked like Javert, but I also didn't think he acted like Javert.
I didn't think he was bad, but this wasn't a performance that felt like it was full of life.
Yeah.
And this is a production that felt like it was full of life.
Yeah.
Like I thought Lino Ventura was fantastic as Valjean. This one had the very best version of Marius's friends.
Oh yeah, we loved those guys. They were fun.
This made me the saddest when they died.
Yeah.
And the way we're introduced to the group, to the revolutionaries, is this amazing thing because he's already met Courfeyrac. And Courfeyrac is bringing all of his friends to meet Marius, and they come marching across this plaza. They look like they're about to break into song.
They really do. Well, because there's this very like triumphal music playing in the background, and they're like literally marching, and like their scarves and coats are like kind of blowing in the wind, and they're just in this like formation. They look real cool. But it does look like they're about to sing.
It's maybe the best shot in the movie.
Yeah.
And it made me connect with them so much. And as friends, they felt like they had the most kind of life as a group of friends. It felt the most realistic. And then when they all die at the end, it's not one of these things where they kind of all drop in battle. And then like in the book, when we're at the very end, it's just Enjolras and Grantaire. All of them line up together to get killed. And they get shot. It's very theatrical.
It's like a full firing squad.
Yeah, they're shot at on a balcony inside. And they all like fall off of it as they get shot. And it is beautiful in slow motion. And
then after all the students die, you get that shot again of them all walking across the plaza and singing and having, and the music is playing, like to show them in happier times. But you just sort of get this one shot of it, and then it moves on.
And then you get that amazing cut where it cuts straight to Javert back at like police headquarters saying, yes, and then we killed them all.
Yeah.
You know, if I compare this to 1958, for those that remember in the first episode, we talked about the 1958 French version. Nothing abstract or expressionist was happening in that one.
No, like, obvious directorial point of view.
There was no directorial flair,
Yes.
I would say.
No vision.
Right? This one, though, had a lot of that. Fantine's fall from grace.
Yes. Okay, so we just see Fantine, just her face, like up against like a dark background, just as she looks. You know what it kind of reminds me of? Like when you see a sped up film of like fruit rotting.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. First her hair is short, and then her face is all beat up, and then she has no teeth, and then she's all bloody. It's like the progression of Fantine. Like, it is dark.
Totally abstract.
Yeah.
It's like, this is not a scene that's happening.
She's just staring into the camera.
Yeah,
and,
right
like,
down
this
the barrel.
Change is happening around her.
It was great because it was really expressive in a way that I hadn't seen her story told before. And because she's staring right at the camera, you're kind of forced to empathize with this character.
Yeah.
And I felt terrible for her. I was going to mention the battle scene at the barricade because one of the things that's so good in the musical, the way it's staged, is that it's staged in slow motion. And it's obviously like it's actors on a stage pretending to be slow motion.
With the turntable.
Right. In this one, though, actual slow motion.
Mhm.
And we get the barricade battle is something that is not done incredibly well in all of the versions that we watch. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. This is one, though. I think this one probably ends up being my favorite because we get this thing where they're saying they're coming over the barricade, and then suddenly we get this beautiful long slow motion shot coming out of the door of the cafe. Everyone's got their guns. They're all running up onto the barricade. We see people dying. It's a beautiful shot. I loved it.
Yeah. Well, there was one other bit that I think it was clearly the director trying to do something, and I think neither of us responded to it, but that was the ending.
Yeah.
They don't do the thing where like Cosette and Marius like come back and like see Valjean while he's dying and like forgive him for everything. Like, he's just on his own.
Yeah.
He's real old. He's like in his old apartment. He's like clearly not doing well. And then it goes into this sort of weird dream sequence where he's like back on the chain gang, and like he sees Javert, and like he's sort of flashing back and forth between like the present and the past. And then he sees Javert's face, and Javert says something like...
At the beginning of the movie, Javert comes up to him while he's pulling this huge cart, and he says, Valjean, you're free.
Yeah.
Because he's telling him, logistically, I'm giving you some information. You no longer are a prisoner.
Right.
You're free. And then they do the exact same scene at the end in that montage you're talking about. And he says to him, now you're truly free.
Yeah.
Also, Valjean now looks like he does now.
Yeah.
Even though he's still on the chain gang.
Yeah.
So it's way more abstract.
Yeah, and it's like, I think he died.
Yeah, I think
But
that's the point.
It's a little abstract, as you say.
Because his life was rough, but now he's dead. Now he's truly free.
Right.
Which is, that's a dark way to look at things.
But accurate, maybe?
Yeah, I guess I don't want to move away from this one without mentioning a couple other quick things. One, this one was one of the funniest ones that we had. Like, I feel like everything we're talking about is really big and dramatic and serious, but it was also really funny. Remember Fauchelevent at the convent with his bell?
Oh, yeah, that was funny. And again, like, very directorial. Like, you see him coming up on these nuns and these students with the bell, and they all just, like, freeze and then just in unison turn around and walk the other way because they're not supposed to see him because he's a man.
Yeah.
And that's a director with a point of view, right? Like, that's like, I have this idea for something that's going to be funny. I'm not just going to like turn the camera on and shoot the story.
And there was stuff like that throughout. It was even though it was telling us about some really dark, awful shit, it felt like someone with a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And that to me felt like Hugo. It felt like Hugo was represented in this version.
Yeah.
This is one of the ones that makes me sad that like it's not, you just can't get it in the United States.
Yeah.
We had to get like the French version
and
deal with
thing.
these subtitles. And
don't worry about it, but it was a whole thing.
We actually, if you're ever interested in hearing our bonus show, we go into detail about how we actually got all of these and what we had to go through.
Yeah. For purposes of this, not super important. Very hard to find. You can't get it.
Yeah. I ended up loving this one.
Yeah, it was good.
Do you want to move on to 98?
Let's do it.
I feel like the 90s are kind of go both ways for us. We have watched some really wonderful adaptations from the 90s.
Yeah.
And we've watched some pretty bonkers adaptations from the 90s.
Yeah, well, there's definitely like an aesthetic in the 90s of these big, sweeping Hollywood dramas. And I think it's just that like some properties lend themselves to that and some don't. some directors and actors and producers or whatever kind of know how to handle those,
Yeah.
and some don't. I just feel like if you got all adaptations from the mid to late 90s together that we've seen, there would be a certain aesthetic and a certain similarity between them.
This one, I liked a lot of it.
Yeah.
It was directed by Beale August. It was written by Rafael Iglesias. Of course, Liam Neeson as Jean Valjean.
Yeah.
Like, what a cast.
Yeah, it's a wonderful cast.
Jeffrey Rush as Javert, Uma Thurman as Fantine, Claire Danes as Cosette. I think where I come down on this one is the script is really good.
Yeah, it is.
But I find some of the staging and some of the production questionable.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly around Javert
Mm-hmm.
and mostly around the ending.
Yeah.
But we can get to that.
We can get to that. Yeah, I mean, I think part of what they're trying to do with the script is, I think this is what they were trying to do. This is what I got the impression that they were trying to do, is make the female characters kind of more prominent and more active and more important and give them more agency. This is one of the first ones that we really see a lot more of Fantine's story. And Cosette is a very active character in this. She's not just like there. And I think a lot of versions that we've seen so far, Cosette has really been nothing. And we haven't mentioned her a lot because she just has been nothing.
Yeah.
So again, like one of the things about, I just want to talk about Fantine's story for a minute, if that's okay with you. And then we can kind of come to Liam Neeson as I do that and what we thought of him. So first of all, Fantine is Uma Thurman. I was a little bit worried that like she was too beautiful for Fantine. Not necessarily that she was too beautiful, because Fantine is supposed to be very beautiful, but like that she was too beautiful in a modern way and would kind of be out of place. And I guess my worry is for nothing, because we've seen Uma Thurman in period things before. We saw her in that Robin Hood that I thought she was very good in.
She's like the best part of the
movie. She was so good. And like she just has the kind of face that like you can ugly her up and it seemed realistic. You know what I mean? When she was weak and like dying, like she didn't look as scary as some of the Fantines that we've seen.
Yeah.
But like it was definitely like, oh, she's not doing well. I just thought she was so great. And one of the things that, you know, again, I think one thing that we're kind of moving towards in these more recent, not that 98 was that recent, but like these sort of more recent adaptations, is I think like screenwriters want to move away from plot that is dependent on people just not talking to each other, or like misunderstandings or miscommunications, because like that's been done so often and it's not that interesting. And we'll talk more about it when we get into a couple other versions. But like in this one, this was the first one I think that we saw where the harm that Valjean does to Fantine is an active harm. It's not just someone lies to her and says like, oh, the mayor said I should fire you. Whatever she is, the forewoman of the factory does come to Monsieur Madeleine and say, hey, like this girl lied to me. And he's super distracted because he's just seen Javert. Like he's really in another place.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, fire her then. Just fire her. It's fine. You just deal with it.
I think that's what he says to her. He says, I trust you to I trust you.
I trust you. Just deal with it. So like the harm that he has done, he actually has done her harm. It's not just like I'm a saint and I'm making up for some harm that somebody else did to you in my, whether it was in my name or not. Like he actually feels really bad because he did say fire her, and she did get fired, and it is his fault.
One of the other things that I thought really worked in this version, she really develops a relationship with him.
Oh, yeah.
Because usually in the story, what we get is he said, is it true what I've done? Is it true what I've done?
Oh, you broke our vow.
I'm going to sing a little bit.
Okay.
Usually what happens is the way he tries to make himself feel better and take care of her is say, well, I'm going to put her with the nuns.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make sure that she is taken care of, which I'm not going to lie. That's good.
It's good.
He should do that.
That's what he does in the book. So it's like accurate.
At the very least, he should do that. This one, though, goes a step further because he actually puts her up in his own house.
Yeah. He's like, I'm going to care for you myself.
Right. And so it's him and the nun in his house taking care of her. And we get this really beautiful set of scenes where he's developing a relationship with her and personally taking care of her.
Yeah, like he's in love with her.
It's clear.
And I don't know that in a vacuum, I love the idea of like, oh, he's doing this because he's in love with her, because that's a very selfish motive. But like, they had a beautiful chemistry between them, and I actually really liked it.
And it's definitely not even subtext. It's text.
No, it's text, because he says, I loved your mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it made it more effective
Yeah.
when she does die.
Yes.
And he has to then beat the shit out of Javert.
Oh, my God.
Okay, let's talk about Liam Neeson.
Okay.
If I had never seen any of these, and you asked me, who is the best casting for Valjean?
Yes.
Of all of them. You've read the book, you've never seen any of them. I would tell you it would be so quick for me to decide that Liam Neeson is like the platonic ideal for the man who plays Valjean.
Yeah.
Because he's an enormous bear of a man.
Yes.
He's big and powerful in a way that Valjean should be.
Yeah.
And it kind of, it makes it more believable when Javert sees him.
Yeah.
Because he's
like, oh, I recognize you. You're very distinctive.
And it made it great.
Yeah.
There was just a lot of things about his character. First of all, I do think that Liam Neeson was incredibly good as Valjean. Can I talk a little bit about his literacy?
Oh, yeah. That was interesting.
One of the things I loved about this version is that they really made a decision, because in the book and in the other versions, the idea is that when he went into prison, he was illiterate, but then over the years, he became literate. And by the time he's the mayor, he is fully literate.
Yeah.
In this one, though, they make the decision that that's unrealistic and not plausible. So he's struggling. And one of the really nice character touches they give, this movie invents a lot of things, but I think most of them work.
Yeah.
And one of the things they invent is that he never writes his own letters. He dictates everything.
Yeah, he's got like an assistant who helps him.
He's nervous about the whole thing. There's even a scene where Javert says to him, I have this letter for you. Oh, yes, but I remember you don't read,
you don't
do
read.
you?
And he's like, what? And he's like, yeah, your assistant told me, like, you don't know how to read. Which, like, is insulting, but, like, for the time, probably not so unusual.
Yeah. And it gave him something to help him form his relationship with Fantine, because isn't there at one point they get a letter from the Thénardiers?
And like neither of them can really read it.
But it kind of brings them together as characters.
Yeah.
I thought that was really effective.
That was good.
So that's the kind of stuff I really like. So I ended up really liking this Valjean.
Yeah.
But I didn't like how the whole thing ended. But we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good bridge because we're going to talk about the Thénardiers now. So this version, unfortunately, I think due to time, probably and other reasons, this one also cuts the Thénardiers in Paris.
Yeah.
And like, there's no Eponine, is there?
Nope.
No adult Eponine, I don't think at all.
We see her as a kid, and that's it.
Yeah, she's not in it, which is weird.
There's like two things that people generally do when they're trying to cut the story down, and that's one of them. I'll mention the other one when you're done.
Yeah, but this this one is unique for a very special reason, which is it was the first one to like actively insinuate some nefarious thing that Valjean wanted to do with little Cosette.
It was pretty gross.
It was really gross. And I just wrote like, gross in my notes. Because like he's at the inn and he's showing all this interest in her and he like buys her a doll and says like, let her play and blah, blah, blah. Thénardier like kind of sidles up to him and he's like, Monsieur, would you like her to sit in your lap? And he's like, what? No, I do not want that. But it was like gross, but also like the modern viewer is going to kind of make that leap anyway, that like, hey, this is a little bit weird that this adult man is showing up at this inn and suddenly like showing all this interest in this little girl. Like it is weird. Like we may as well like lean into it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. When of course that is not his intention in any way.
Yeah.
Yes, what were you going to say?
So the other thing that usually is done if you want to shorten the story is something to do with Marius, because Marius, as we know, he has an arc. He starts out being, really in favor of the king, but then he finds out about his father and it makes him hate his grandfather, and he finds these new friends and he becomes a revolutionary, and he forgoes money and riches.
Yeah, the whole arc with his grandfather and everything.
Right. So there's a lot to the character. One of the things that we constantly see when they want to cut him down is he becomes the leader of the revolutionaries.
Right.
We meet him and he's already in charge.
Yes.
And that's Cosette's whole thing.
He's giving a speech.
Multiple versions, Cosette comes upon him as he's talking to the crowd and everything.
Yeah.
I don't like it any time I see it because it just feels too easy for me.
Yeah.
And Marius is a hard character to like anyway, because even if you show his arc, one of the problems is that he's a major character who doesn't show up until halfway through the story.
Yeah.
So you really can do one of two things. You can either work really hard to make sure that he has his arc and make him empathetic, or, I don't know, put him earlier in the story, but like no one has done that.
It's funny because I feel like I just heard Victor Hugo roll over in his grave. Like, yes, I mean, technically he doesn't show up, but the story of Marius begins all the way back at Waterloo. Why do you think I had 200 pages about the Battle of Waterloo?
But that's one of the things I love about the book, and one of the reasons why I don't mind the Battle of Waterloo is because I think Marius' story does work in the book.
Yeah.
Because it's given the time that it needs for him to become interesting and empathetic and have an arc. That works for me.
Yeah.
And there are other versions where we don't meet Marius until halfway through, but he still gets his arc.
Yeah.
So I still care about him. This one, though, doesn't do that.
No,
this
it
one is
doesn't do
just
that.
he's in charge and he's already capable and handsome and a revolutionary, and I found him utterly boring.
Yes.
I don't care for that version of the character.
Yeah. On the other hand, this Cosette I found very interesting. And this version, I believe there was the implication that Cosette, like, she knows they're on the run. Like, she actually understands that, but she doesn't quite know from what.
Yeah.
So she, like, will cover for him, for Valjean. So at one point, like, Javert comes to the house and he, like, Valjean doesn't have any notice and he, like, runs upstairs because obviously Javert will recognize him immediately. And he, like, sends Cosette down and, like, tells her what to say. And she, like, covers for him beautifully.
I don't know how beautiful it was.
Well, but she sort of pretends to be, like, kind of ditzy. And she's like, okay, yeah, I'll tell my dad that you were here, blah, blah, blah.
But she's definitely doing that Claire Danes chin shaking. She's real scared the entire time.
Right, but what I'm saying is, like, I can't think of another version of Cosette prior to this that would even have been anything close to a scene where she would have been on her own, expected to, like, do something for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a point where she actually, like, holds Javert at gunpoint. Remember, like, they get his gun away from him and she, like, holds him at gunpoint while he's, like, trying to get to Marius, and then, like, Marius is like, okay, it's fine, give me the gun, I'll take care of this. And I mean, the other thing about, like, Claire Danes is that I think she gives a really good performance. Like, I think she is all in. Like, you were just saying, like, she does the Claire Danes chin. Like Claire Danes has a way of weeping on camera with, like, just the full ugly cry with no ego that, like, it's so distinctive because I can't think of many other actresses that, like, let themselves go that way. Can you mentioned Alison Hannigan that you think is willing to do that, which I thought was nice. But she is distinctive in that way.
I mean, I think that's one thing you can say about this version is that the two the big female parts, the two big parts, are played by actresses that don't have a lot of ego about how they look.
Yeah,
even though they're both gorgeous.
You
know?
But, like, and that they really carry these parts and make these women very intelligent. Like, I think Uma Thurman and Claire Danes are both very, very smart people. So I think that comes through because it makes their characters seem very smart. Like, I feel like there's so many versions that I'm, like, screaming at the screen with Fantine, like, each one of her, like, stupid choices that she makes, that, like, any given choice that she made would have been better than what she ended up doing. I get that a lot. Actually, we'll talk about it, but in the 2019 version, because, like, people were telling her what to do and she wasn't doing it, and she was really stupid. But in this one, I feel like I was all in with Uma Thurman. Like, she was very sympathetic to me. But yeah, do you want to talk about the end real quick? Because the end was a little disappointing.
I don't want to. I want to talk about the end, but kind of in a greater sense, I want to talk about implausibility.
Yeah, because
I feel like one of the things that the first half of the movie really has going for it is that it's kind of written from a perspective of being plausible. Like, we talked about, how well Valjean can, read and write.
Yeah.
That's super plausible, and I really liked it, and it enhances the character.
A touch of realism.
But then we get into the second half, and stuff just stops working for me. Mm-hmm. So here's one thing. If Marius is the leader of the movement, it's a little less plausible that he would be okay being saved.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of Marius's whole thing in the book, is he was never the leader in the movement.
Yeah.
And he feels really guilty about all these other guys dying.
And he's sort of in turmoil about whether he should even go to the barricade or not. Whereas if he's the leader, obviously he's going to be at the barricade, or he's a pretty bad leader.
Yeah, so that didn't work for me. Another thing, there's literally a line, and this is, you mentioned before Javert going to the house and Cosette has to cover for Valjean.
Yeah.
One of the reasons this happens is Javert is now suspicious of this guy he's heard about, who is a fixture in the community in Paris, and he gives a lot of money to the church, and he goes on like soup lines and things like that.
Right.
And there's literally a line where someone is saying to Javert, the whole neighborhood speaks well of him.
Yeah.
I find that implausible because in every other version and in the book, Valjean doesn't want anyone to speak of him in any way.
Yes.
Like, speaking poorly of him or speaking well doesn't matter. He wants to be under the radar.
Yes.
And this Valjean is just putting himself back out there and making a public face, which I think kind of works against the character.
Yeah, because the whole reason Javert goes there in the first place is he's, like, following Marius the radical, and someone's like, hey, Marius is, like, seducing this girl, and he's like, oh, well, I better go tell her father then, like, not knowing who he is at that time.
Yeah. So that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
But then we get to the ending, and to me, I hated this ending.
Yeah.
I hated it. We get all the normal stuff, and because there's no Gilles Normand in this one, what he's doing is he asks Valjean asks Javert if he can bring Marius back to his place and brings him back to Cosette, and then he says goodbye, and then Javert takes him, and he takes him down to the river, and he tells all of his men to leave. And now it's just him and Valjean. And they have what I assume was intended to be a verbal showdown for the ages.
Sure.
It was supposed to be this moment where the script was going to do everything, and nothing that they say to each other really means anything.
Yeah.
It's not, I didn't find it affecting at all. But what ends up happening is Javert tells him everything. There's no subtext to anything that he's saying, and he tells him, I'm paraphrasing at this point, but he essentially tells him, I always believed that no one could ever change, but now I have shown that you have shown me that you were bad and now you're good, and that rocks my worldview. And
I can't live here anymore.
I cannot live on this world anymore. And so he unshackles him, and he puts the shackles on himself, and then he just falls backwards into the river and disappears forever.
Yes.
And then we get this thing where Valjean is just walking away and
kind of hair blowing in the wind, throws his hat into the air, finally free.
That's not the story.
It just doesn't work.
Valjean doesn't get a happy ending.
Apart from logistically, if like Javert disappears and goes in the water and the person last seen with him was Valjean, they're going to come after him and be like, you murdered this man.
Yeah, it's a really bad plan.
Yeah.
That is so just utterly implausible to me. This movie, to me, this just keeps happening. I'll like him in the first half, and then they fall apart for me in the second half.
Yeah.
The difference with this one is I really liked it in the first half.
Yeah.
I was expecting, if it could maintain that, I was expecting to love it. And we get to the end, and I just didn't.
Yeah.
But it was really nice to see Cosette with a gun.
Yes.
I found that very satisfying.
It was very satisfying.
Jumping forward 2 years.
Back to France.
And how great is it to get back to France?
To the homeland.
I feel like the French ones have been, they've been batting 1,000 so far.
Yeah, like to a man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if we're just looking at whether they're successful or not, like I've enjoyed every single one of the French versions.
Yeah.
The English language one's been a little more hit or miss.
Yeah, we were due for a slightly batshit French version.
And this one is kind of both, which is fun. So in 2000, there was a miniseries. It was a 6-hour miniseries, French language, directed by José Dayan and written by Didier Decoing, starring Gerard Depardieu as Jean Valjean and John Malkovich as Javert. Also, a whole bunch of other really good people. Charlotte Gainsbourg as Fantine, Christian Clavier as Thénardier.
If you have ever had any interest in becoming a patron and listening to the bonus show, we did a whole thing about the machinations that it took for us to be able to watch this 6-hour French miniseries that was truly... I'm not going to say it wasn't available anywhere because it was kind of available. We kind of had to piece it together is
Right.
what I'm saying. We were able to watch the whole thing in French with English subtitles.
Now, here's the thing. Some of you may be hearing this and going like, wait, the Gerard Depardieu one, I've seen it. It's in English, and it's like 3 hours long. What are you talking about?
You would be wrong.
Here's the deal. They shot this whole thing twice, and they released 2 versions of it. So there was the French version, which, as I said, 6 hours and all in French. It was one of those things where we haven't talked about something like this for a really long time. Like it was The Birdcage. I think we talked about this first, where the original La Cage aux Folles, it was this weird thing where the 2 lead actors, one was speaking Italian the entire time and the other one was speaking French. And so when the movie was released in Italy, the French actor was dubbed. And when it was released in France, the Italian actor was dubbed.
Yeah.
This is a thing that happens more often than American audiences are used to. If you're making something in French and you think, well, we want some of that American money, what's going to happen? Well, 6 hours is a little long for those dum-dums.
Especially with subtitles.
Right. Yeah, 6 hours is a long time to make people read. So we need to cut it down, but also we could do this in English. It's fine. And like I was saying,
We've got John Malkovich.
Right.
He speaks English.
That's the thing. So like La Cage aux Folles, there's this weird thing that's happening where you can kind of tell throughout the whole thing, this was our assumption, that not everyone is speaking perfect French the entire time in the French version.
Yeah.
Some people are dubbed. John Malkovich clearly speaking French.
Yeah, like if you look at his lips, he is saying the French words. He's not speaking English and being overdubbed. He's speaking French, but the voice that you're hearing is not him. They overdubbed him also in French, clearly my assumption being because he has a strong American accent when he speaks French.
Yeah.
That would be my guess.
Or a strong John Malkovich accent, maybe.
Yeah. But it's weird that it's not his voice because we watched like a tiny little bit. We sort of thought at one point about watching the whole thing, but time just did not allow. We did watch a little bit of the English version that they shot, like scene for scene, and it is him obviously speaking English in his own accent.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have all the French actors attempting English, and it is a little bit weird.
It's a bit, the results are varied,
Yeah.
would you say?
Yeah.
That's one of the
Well-
things about Gerard Depardieu that I've always loved is that, like, yeah, he's done English movies, but part of his draw is that he does English movies with a very thick French accent.
Yeah, he always plays a Frenchman
Right.
when he is in American movies. Well, the other thing that we noticed is that some of the actors were dubbed because we're like, there's like a little kid playing Gavroche, so we're like, are they gonna make that poor kid like try to like phonetically pronounce English? He probably doesn't speak English, and they dubbed Gavroche, but the voice that you hear, we both turned to each other and we were like, oh, that's a woman.
There's
like,
an adult woman.
It's an adult woman. Like doing the Bart Simpson thing
Yeah.
and being the voice of a little boy. It was very strange.
I did watch, so that was Gavroche. I did watch a scene from earlier with Petit Gervais.
Yeah.
And Petit Gervais was just his own voice.
Yeah.
And his English is not good
Yeah.
at all. And so the thing is, when I was looking at like critical reviews of these, the critical reviews of the French version in France are very good because it is very long and it includes the whole story and the acting is fine. The critical response to the English version is very bad. People look at it and go like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
No one's good in it. And it's too short, which makes perfect sense to me, which is why we wanted to watch the French version.
Yes.
And I'm very glad that we did. Casting this must have been
Yeah.
a bear
Yeah.
because you're casting everyone for different reasons. And you can't just say, here's what we're going to look for. Every single actor needs to speak French perfectly
Yeah.
because the French version is the canonical version. And they all need to speak English convincingly because we know we want to release it in the United States
Yeah.
and in England. But that's clearly not what they did.
Yeah. I mean, in the meantime, you have Charlotte Gainsborough who speaks perfect French and perfect English,
Mhm.
enough to star in Jane Eyre as the very English Jane Eyre.
Right.
She speaks absolutely fluent French. She speaks absolutely fluent British accented English.
Bottom line, this was an aspect of it that was fascinating.
Yes.
But I think we can kind of put that aside for now.
Yes.
But what it really comes down to is if you watch the English version, which we did watch a bit of, these actors who were quite good in French, a lot of them are not good in English.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's a bummer. And that's why we're just not going to talk about it
but
anymore.
enough about the production. Let's actually talk about the thing we watched.
What
6 hours. 6 hours.
Okay. What was your kind of gut reaction to the whole thing?
You know, it's interesting because you were saying with some of the other versions that like you started off liking them and they fell apart a little bit, and that's what this one felt like for me.
Yeah.
It felt like it went off the rails. I think part of the reason that I was very warm to it at the beginning is because I thought Charlotte Gainsbourg was so good as Fantine, and I love her
Agreed.
as an actor. So once her character died, it just sort of got increasingly batshit. You know, I know like it's like French. We're trying to be like the definitive French Les Misérables, but it was almost like it couldn't help itself. It really took some turns that I was not expecting.
Can you give any examples?
Do you want me to jump right into it?
I mean, sure. Why not?
All right. Here's the big one. This is like the elephant in the room. And this is the thing we just kept like quoting to each other as we watched like subsequent versions because we were like, did that just happen?
They make a choice.
Okay, we're at the very end, like the very end. Valjean is increasingly jealous of Marius. He's like almost like violently upset that Cosette is leaving him. He's really upset. But like as Jeremy pointed out to me, like that happens in the book, right? He's very upset. He wants to keep her with him and he doesn't want her to leave him. And then there's the scene where he goes to Marius to have their conversation about like, I'm a convict and you must never tell her and blah, 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 blah. And he goes like, I love Cosette. And there's this pause and Marius goes, you love her like a father. And there's this pause and he just goes, I love Cosette. And we were just like, ew, no. So then every like subsequent versions we were watching, we just kept turning to each other and going, you love her like a father, though.
Right.
No.
Ugh.
Ugh. It just blew up the whole thing for me. It just like made the previous 6 hours because of course he loves her like a father. Of course he loves her like a father. It doesn't work if he does. And I said to you, like, does that mean what I think it means? Is it some kind of like French like third type of love that I'm like not familiar with? And you were like, I
No.
don't think so. I think it's Eros, you know? It's the the heart wants what it wants.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But we're talking about something that happens in the last half hour of, again, cannot state this enough, a 6-hour version of Les Mis. Do you want to kind of walk it back a little bit?
I want to walk it back a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
So let's start. Here's one of my notes. This Valjean is an interesting Valjean because he really always wants to look on the bright side of things. Like, remember when he's in prison and Javert's telling him, you are gone, you are released, you can go out into the world. Valjean is very positive. He's like, oh, well, this is great.
Yeah.
And he's saying, why are you happy? And he says, well, it's a beautiful day. It's a bright day. I'm free now. This is really good.
This is great.
And he's really confident. And that's not Valjean. That's not Valjean in any good version of the story.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that makes it not a good version. It just really threw me at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of this is Gerard Depardieu's personality or how much of it was the screenwriter or the director. I'm not quite sure, but it is there.
Yeah.
And it is a little weird at the beginning.
Yeah.
That was a little strange to me.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a little bit of an elephant in the room too in terms of casting here with Gerard Depardieu, because of course, like, who are you going to get? Like, who are you going to cast in 2000? Like, he is like the leading man, right? He's the leading guy. But like, he's distinctive looking. And like the very first shot of him in the prison, like, it sort of pans across a line of prisoners, and they've all got like shaved heads and everything. And so then it comes to him, and there's just like this big. There is no way that you would mistake anyone else for Gerard Depardieu. He has a very distinctive nose, and and
body and face
and everything. And part of the reason that I felt that, for example, the whole plot with Champmathieu did not work in this version is because he looked nothing like Gerard Depardieu, like nothing like him. B, Gerard Depardieu and his nose are sitting in the courtroom, so like anybody looking over who knew Valjean would be like, oh no, there he is.
He doesn't even look that different from Valjean, like from himself when he was released from prison.
Yeah.
Just his hair's a little bit better.
Just his hair's like a little bit better. And then C of all, it also didn't do the thing which we're going to talk about in the 2018 version, where the prisoners are clearly like, no, we'll say whatever you want. Like they seem like they hold a sincerely held belief that Champmathieu is Jean Valjean. It makes Javert seem like he's not very good at his job when he's like, that face, where do I know that face?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So as a casting decision, I feel like doesn't super work when part of the plot is dependent on it being like, is it him or is it not? Is it him or is it not? When it's someone that you could not mistake for anyone else.
This is all true.
Yes.
Can I flip the coin for a second?
Sure.
Let me talk about a few things that I liked.
Great.
Here at the end of the day, you get nothing for nothing.
Oh my God.
At the end of the day,
it's slipping in. He can't contain himself. He's been holding back for so long. The dam is going to burst.
At the end of the day,
you're another day older.
The shirt on your back. At the end of the day, I thought this was good.
Like it was good.
It was good. I don't think it was bad. I thought it was good. Was it great? I don't think so, but I think it was good. And there were a number of things that I think specifically make it good. It's not one of these things where like, well, nothing really pissed me off that much, so it's good, which is kind of how I felt about 58. This one, there was stuff in it that I really liked.
Yeah, and before you go into detail about that,
Sure.
I will say, like, even the stuff that was kind of batshit, I think part of the reason that it didn't work, but that it still remained good, is that they really committed to it.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't just like, oh, I don't know, we'll just do this, I guess, and we'll just do that. It was like, no, we've made a choice.
Yes.
Anyway, go ahead.
Like, I want to talk about stuff I like. I feel like I liked the casting, even though they definitely made a choice with the casting.
They cast a lot of these people very young.
Yeah.
Like the Thénardiers, super young, and like Madame Thénardier, sexy. Like this was the sexiest Madame Thénardier for sure. And we saw them like boning sometimes.
Well, if we're talking about sexy Thénardiers, I'm going to get to Christian Clavier here in a second.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a statement, I have a question, but we'll get to my question.
Yes. This is a question you ask of me sometimes about certain actors.
Okay. There was a really good thing that I liked. Gavroche becomes a pretty major character. He's not just there at the battle. He's there and he's friends with Marius. They do the Batman and Robin thing, which is great because the entire time that Thénardier's trap is happening, when he's got Valjean on the other side of the wall and he reveals himself to be Thénardier, but Marius is on the other side with the gun. And he's like, Thénardier, wait a second. That's the guy my dad told me I have to be indebted to, but I want to save this other guy because I love his daughter. What am I supposed to do? All of that's internal.
Yeah.
So in the book, this is all Hugo telling us this stuff. In this, I think they do a really good choice where Gavroche is in the room with Marius. So Marius actually has a person to tell all of of this too.
Yeah.
And I think it really works. It's actually like one of my favorite versions of Marius going through his shit.
Yeah.
Because he actually gets to say the things that he's feeling, and it doesn't feel tacked on because there's a character who doesn't know and he wants to tell them.
Yes.
It's good exposition.
It is good exposition. I will say there was something very confusing about Gavroche in this version, though, because Gavroche
one of my notes is Gavroche is a vampire.
Gavroche is either a vampire or has some kind of like disease where he remains a child, because Gavroche is there when Valjean and Cosette first rock up into town, and she's a little girl and he's an adult, and he's like, we're on the run, we don't have anywhere to go, and Gavroche like lets them sleep in like a carriage or the undertakers or whatever.
Not an elephant like he does in the book.
Not an elephant.
Well, he doesn't let them sleep in the elephant.
They couldn't afford.
He has
an
an elephant. What I'm saying is Gavroche owns an elephant.
They couldn't afford the elephant. He's also there when she's an adult and they're fighting at the barricades 10 years later, and he's still a child. So it's the same actor. So I literally, I don't even know what they were trying to do.
Here's
do you have a theory?
No, I have no theory whatsoever.
Okay.
My theory is that this isn't great.
Yeah.
And things like that happen.
Yeah.
But I was talking about the good stuff.
No, I understand that.
You're perfectly in the right to bring this up.
Yeah,
because it's a very good point to make.
I just thought we're doing sort of point and counterpoint here.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know if the director was just like, no one will notice.
Well, let me get back to the good stuff.
Okay.
Because one of the things that Marius has to do is he has to fire the gun, to warn Javert with all of his cops outside that this thing is about to happen and this guy's about to be hurt. This was the plan that he made with Javert. In every other version, he fires the gun because it just feels like it's time to do it.
Yeah.
There's no real inciting thing for it. It's just, you know what? Thénardier's gone too far. I know my dad told me I'm supposed to be nice to this guy, but I just can't. Bang, there goes the gun. This one makes, I think, a really smart choice in the script where Thénardier is talking to Valjean and he says, here's the deal. You're going to give me a ton of money. If you don't, I can't even remember what the threat is, but he threatens Cosette.
Yeah.
And at that moment, Marius goes, oh, fuck this, and fires the gun.
Yeah.
And that makes perfect sense. And it makes so much sense. I don't know why other versions didn't do that specifically.
Yeah. Can we talk about the Thénardiers actually for a moment?
Like I said, I have a question, so let's talk about the Thénardiers.
What is your question?
Well, my question is about Christian Clavier.
Yeah.
My question is this. Is he handsome?
I mean, this was certainly a sexy Thénardier.
Yes.
Like they were boning in the room and like they were making out all the time, and he's got like a hot blonde wife who's taller than he is, and he's definitely into that.
Bottom line, I loved Christian Clavier as Thénardier.
Yeah, he was really good,
Thénardier.
and like he had quite the storyline. Like he was in it all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't quite Madame Thénardier like.
She was okay.
She was okay. She was all right. It was definitely, let me put it this way. Like I said, when they do something, they commit to it. They were definitely like, we're going to go a different direction than how she's usually portrayed. She's going to be really abusive, but she's going to be like hot.
Yeah.
Okay. We're sort of going backwards through the production because I do want to talk about Charlotte Gainsbourg as Fantine for a moment.
Sure. And then I want to talk about Toussaint.
Okay. I just thought she was really good. I thought she made that journey, from kind of young and innocent to kind of desperate, like, leaving her child with the Thénardiers. And, I think now that I think about it, like, she just sort of stumbles upon them by chance. And she's like, oh, your kids are really pretty. Maybe you seem like a really nice mom. Like, do you think you could keep my girl? Now that I think about it, like, if Madame Thénardier is like an attractive young woman, much like herself, like that would probably lead her more to lead her child with her than if she's this like ogre. That works actually, now that I think about it. I just thought she had a nice arc. I thought the production gave her the space and time to have a nice arc. Her fall was not like instant. She got worse and worse as it went. When she sold her hair, she looked absolutely adorable. She could not have been cuter with
short hair. Don't
haircut.
care.
Well, she has like such great bone structure that she looks great with short hair. So she looked almost better, But it was just like the moment that everything I think turned for me, where I was just like, I think I might be Les Mis'd out, was we have seen this poor woman die too many times.
Yeah.
Because she was on her deathbed and we were kind of talking, and we were talking about Les Mis. We weren't like distracted, but we weren't necessarily talking about like what was happening. And you kind of looked up and you went, oh, there she goes. And she like died. And I could not stop laughing. I was like, all the emotion is taken out. We've seen this woman die too many times. It's too much. It's too much. Don't watch 12 versions of Les Mis. Don't do it. Don't do it. Like, do one a month. Don't do them all in 2 weeks. It's too many. All right, keep going.
I want to talk about Toussaint.
Great.
Toussaint is Valjean and Cosette's servant when they live in Paris, which is a woman in the book. She's a woman in almost any version that she appears in. Not in this one.
Not in this one.
In this one, Toussaint is a man. He is also an ex-convict. He is also mute. All of these things come together to make a fucking amazing version of Toussaint. I loved Toussaint in this so goddamn much. And the entire time he's communicating just by writing on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. He was so good. And it did so many different things because he represents Valjean's desire and belief that people can change because he's hired this other ex-convict.
Right.
And you do get the sense that they've known each other for a long time. There's something else going on there. So instead of being, and I'm not saying just because Toussaint is usually a woman, that means she's not a good character. I'm saying most versions don't really take the time to make Toussaint an interesting character. And this one does, and I loved him.
Yeah, and it's just funny that, like, this is, again, it just seemed like they did a lot of weird stuff with the plot. The scene where Javert comes to see Thénardier, because Thénardier, I guess, like, makes a report or something that a kid was stolen from him, so Javert, like, goes to investigate, and he's he's just like talking about, you know, like, oh, this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened. And Javert is like, excuse me, you sold him a child? And you just see this look on Thénardier's face like, oh, I guess I did. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have like brought that to the attention of the police. It's very good. It's very good.
I guess I just gonna say two things really quickly. One is a question. One is more of a statement. On Thénardier, one of the things we loved in this one is that his inn is it's one of the first times we really saw it as a theme inn.
Yeah.
Because it's always a theme inn because he named the inn out. It's the Sergeant of Waterloo.
Yeah.
Which is about his whole story saving Marius's father. But in this one, he like always wears his uniform all the time.
Yeah.
And he keeps it looking really good. It's not like in the show where he has the uniform, but it's kind of gross and dirty.
It's like maybe just the only clothes he happens to have.
Yeah, we've seen that in other versions, but this one is like, no, he always wears it. He always looks great. He puts the sign on his back and walks around town with it. It's a whole thing. Like his room with his wife, which is where I think he puts up Valjean.
Yeah.
He has all the flags up and everything. It's clearly a theme in.
Yes.
And it's kind of delightful.
This version also, you know, obviously they moved to Paris and he's got his gang and everything. And this was the first one, I think, that made it clear that he had this big gang that was like living in the sewers, and that's why he ran into Valjean at the end. He didn't just like randomly happen to be there.
Are you setting me up to do the joke, or did you want to do the joke?
No, you can do the joke.
They're the wet bandits.
They're the wet bandits. Like, so then anytime anyone went into the sewers after that, we're like, it's the wet bandits.
They're the wet bandits.
It was great.
I guess so. I'm going to end on my question.
Okay.
Gerard Depardieu.
Yeah.
I only know him as an American.
Yes.
I am very curious to know what the French think of him.
Yeah.
Because that's hard to find. You can't just look up what do the French think of Gerard Depardieu. Like, which actor is he most analogous to in American cinema?
Yeah, like, is he Tom Hanks? Is he Tom Cruise?
Like, is he Bruce Willis 20 years ago?
Yeah.
Is he Bruce Willis now? Like, he's gone through some shit in his personal life.
Steve Guttenberg?
Like, do we? Yeah, exactly. That's actually probably best.
Yeah.
Is like, is he Tom Hanks or is he Steve Guttenberg? Because I don't really know.
Yeah.
Both of those are people I like, and I think they're both good and stuff. But what it really comes down to is he the guy who's going up and he is a draw? Is he drawing people to the theater? Is he winning awards? Does he have the hearts and minds of the viewing public? Or is he someone who he's fun? We all know Gerard. We know him. But like, come on. We don't take him that serious.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't know.
I don't know.
And to anyone who's listening who maybe is French, like, or knows, tell us. I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
But would you like to move on?
Yes, let's move on.
This was another one, kind of like 67. I was super happy that we figured out how to watch. One of our listeners clued us into how to do it, and I don't want to talk about that right now because it's not important. But in 2007, there was an anime series of Les Misérables called Les Misérables Shoujo Cosette, which I think it means like beautiful young woman Cosette.
Yes.
Which is now marking our third of the like Nippon Animation 52 episode series.
Yes.
We did first Anne of Green Gables, then we did A Little Princess, and now we're doing Les Mis.
Yes.
I'll just throw this out there. We did not watch the entire thing. We
Yes.
didn't do it for any of them because they're 52 episodes and that's 26 hours of content and we have jobs.
We just can't.
We love this show and we do everything we can for it, but we do have jobs and we do have a child.
We watched many episodes and a selection of the ones we didn't watch so we have a sense of it from beginning to end.
We watched like 15 episodes and then kind of raced
We
through the
skimmed
rest
through
of
it,
it.
yeah.
I have a question for you, co-host.
Yeah.
Anne of Green Gables.
Yeah.
Long book?
No. Short book.
Okay. Little Princess. Long book?
Short book.
Okay.
Similar length.
So filling up 52 episodes, what do you have to do? No one can see you doing that.
I'm doing the universal gesture for stretch it out.
Stretch it out?
Like Bob Balaban in A Mighty Wind.
Just standing in the wings with your hands furiously pulling apart, going, stretch it out, stretch it out. Okay. You have to add a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Les Misérables by Victor Hugo. Kind of a long book, right?
It's long.
And they still invent stuff.
So much
They
stuff.
still have to invent things. But I think this is the case. So here's the thing.
It's for children, so they had to change a lot of things.
That's what I'm saying.
It's
so
Les Mis Jr.
Two things are going on with this that aren't happening with A Little Princess and Anne of Green Gables, which we really enjoyed, and we enjoyed this too. They're all good. In this one, yes, they invent things, but they don't invent things because they need to fill time, because there is enough story to fill 52 episodes. They change things because it's for kids.
Yeah, it's for ding dang kids.
Like, okay,
you can't kill Gavroche. You can't kill him. It's for kids.
They don't even kill Javert.
Yeah,
Javert, who does not die.
Yeah, they do kill Eponine and Fantine. So if you're a lady, you can die. If you're a little boy or a man, no.
They kill them, and they do kill
dying.
all of the revolutionaries.
They do, yes.
Which makes it weird for me that they don't kill Javert. I guess suicide isn't really...
Yeah, you can't kill a kid, and you can't have Javert do a suicide. Like, you just can't.
They add a dog sidekick.
Yeah, they do that, and he makes it. The dog's fine. The dog does not come to any harm.
Let me back up for a second. Directed by Hiroaki Sakurai, written by Tomoko Motohashi. As I say, 52 episodes. We watched about 15 and then skipped our way through. It is very, very good. But there's one big thing that they kind of change in terms of the perspective of the story. Because here's the thing. If you're going to do Anne of Green Gables and A Little Princess, who's the main character?
The child.
A little girl. If you're going to do Les Misérables, is there a little girl in it?
Yes.
Is she the main character?
Not remotely.
Cosette basically becomes the main character.
Yeah, it's all from her perspective. Sort of. Like, you see Valjean doing things that she doesn't know about, but, like, he's sort of secondary, at least until they meet in episode, 15.
Let me put it this way. Even though it's not necessarily, there are things that aren't from her perspective, it's all told in her timeline.
Yeah.
So the whole first episode is her and Fantine. You meet the Thénardiers in episode 1 and she leaves them. You don't even meet Valjean until episode 2.
Yeah.
And then in like episode 2 or 3, Valjean has Alain. He has this like little sidekick, this little kid.
Yeah.
Because, like I was saying, it's the Batman and Robin thing. You need someone to tell these things to.
Right.
He kind of tells him his backstory, and then you as an audience see in his head, you get to see Valjean's backstory, but it's all told in flashback.
Yeah.
Because in every other version, Valjean's the main character. He is not the main character in this one.
Yes.
He's in almost all of it, but Cosette is the main character.
Yeah.
Which is I don't think that's a bad choice. That's kind of a cool choice. Let me throw this out there. If you're going to go so far as to not kill Javert, you're not really doing Les Mis.
Sure.
It kind of doesn't bother me that you want to change the perspective of the story.
Yeah.
Because you're doing your own thing. It's for a totally different audience. It's for a totally different purpose.
Yeah, and Cosette gets a sidekick too. She gets both a dog and a child sidekick. Because she's got Gavroche and she's got Choo Choo the dog.
Teeny tiny Gavroche, who's so cute.
He's so cute. He's so adorable.
And Shoo Shoo the dog, who's so cute.
He's so cute.
Big white fluffy dog.
Yeah, so,
Saves Gavroche from the barricade.
Yeah, he does. Gavroche is fine. He just gets a little bit shot.
One of my notes was just, what's this Shoo Shoo bullshit?
And like, do you want to talk about like the character design for Marius? He is like, who's like the anime hero?
He looks like Naruto or something like that.
Yeah,
like
is that who it is?
I don't know. Like
he's got like spiky hair.
Yeah, he just fell out of anime. It's like when Strong Bad describes an anime guy. That's a reference some people will get.
Okay.
He looks like kind of your classic spiky haired anime guy.
Yeah, and Valjean is just like enormous, and Javert looks like Judge Claude Frollo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
You know? He's got that like weird nose and like weird hair.
It's one of those things where usually one of the things we see is that the character design tends to be perfect.
Yeah.
And Valjean is perfect. Javert's not perfect, though, because he doesn't look anything like Javert is described in the book. He's still projecting, I'm the bad guy.
Yeah.
But
it's anime though. Like, it's for children. Like you have to make the bad guy look like a bad guy.
I don't know. You can still make him look like a bad guy. I think the problem is he'd probably end up looking a little like Valjean.
Yeah.
If you did him as described in the book.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, do you have anything else to say about the anime?
Like they do add some characters. There's like a priest in town. What was the shit that happened? The priest helped her write a letter to her mom.
Oh yeah, you were so mad about this. The priest like helped her write a letter to Fontaine because they're like writing letters back and forth. So and Cosette is like always present when the letters are being read, so she like knows her mom is writing to the Thénardiers. This goes on for so long, by the way, because she's obviously the main character. He helps her write a letter because he's teaching her to read and write, and then he has her like sign her name, but on the outside of the envelope so you can see it. And so then the postman is walking. And
he has one job.
He's got one job.
He has one job.
He's got the letter.
Deliver the letters.
It just happens to be on the top of his bag. And he goes to the Thénardiers and he's like, hey, do you have any letters? And she's like, yeah, I have a letter. Hang on. And she goes to drop it in the bag and she sees this letter lying on the top. And she's like, oh, is that from Cosette? Yeah, let me, I'm just going to put my letter in with hers because I'm also writing to Fontaine and we can like spare the postage. And the postman's like, hey, you can't do that. But doesn't like make any move to stop her.
He does nothing.
And
it's
so
his
she
only
grabs
job,
the
and he
letter,
does nothing.
Grabs the letter, opens it, reads it, like crumples it, and throws it on the fire. Oh, and it was the letter from Cosette saying, like, they're treating me badly. Can you come get me, please?
Mm-hmm.
It obviously didn't make it to its destination.
I mean, it wouldn't have mattered because Fontaine was dying
She was dying anyway. Yeah, she couldn't possibly have come. She was, like, dying at that point. And so, yeah, so she does die.
I'm just saying, the postman had one job.
You were very angry about it. You were very
He didn't put up a fight at all.
You were very
angry.
Awful. It was just, like, a slight verbal objection.
Can we talk about the Thénardiers?
Yeah.
They were amazing.
Yeah, just like their look.
Their look was incredible.
Yeah, he was just like this tiny, weaselly little guy. He was always kind of doing like a weird little dance in the background, and she was just like, again, like this sort of ogre.
They were great. I loved this Thénardier. I loved this Valjean. I loved this Thénardier. I'm not going to say I loved the Cosette, but you know what? If you're going for like sweet little anime kid, she's this perfect sweet little anime kid.
Yeah.
Clearly it's effective. And then we skipped ahead. So we did see like Marius's introduction. We watched a bit of the battle. We saw Cosette when she was older. We saw the end of the story.
He died.
Javert doesn't die. So this episode really upset me because it is important to me and I love the book and I love the musical. Javert's whole thing is his long dark night of the soul does not lead to him saying, I cannot live in this world anymore.
Yeah.
Instead, it leads him to say, people can change, and I will also be a better person
and
for
Valjean,
it.
that Valjean, he's a pretty nice guy.
He helped show me this, and I have seen the light. And he even comes back later, because when Thénardier comes to Marius to tell him the whole thing about, you, Valjean, you don't know who this guy is, give me some money because he killed a guy, and I'm going to tell you about it. Javert shows up and arrests Thénardier at that moment. He kind of saves the day at the very end. Sure, okay, that's fine. I don't want that in my Les Mis, but that's fine.
It's fine.
We did the same thing we did with Akage no An, where we kept telling each other, let's actually watch this whole thing.
Yeah, and then once we had skipped through the end, we were like, we have no more desire to watch this whole thing.
But it was really weird. I think I mentioned this before, but it was really weird, like, not seeing Gavroche die, not seeing Javert die, but boy, all the revolutionaries die.
Oh, they bit it.
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
And Gavroche does get shot.
Oh yeah, and it's like terrible. And I was like, aha, they did kill him. And then he's like, I'm fine. And it's all fine.
Well, he's basically dead, but then Shushu comes in and drags him out and drags him, and they find Cosette, and then he wakes up.
He's fine.
And everything is fine.
They lived happily ever after the end.
It was kind of fun, and I'm glad we watched it. Are we almost done?
Or like after this, we don't have to talk about non-musical Les Mis anymore.
In 2018, there was a miniseries. It was directed by Tom Shankland, written by Andrew Davies. 6 episodes. We get another 6-hour Les Mis epic. And let me start with Andrew Davies.
Yeah.
You might know what I'm about to say if you've listened to our other episodes that are about things that he's written. We kind of thought Andrew Davies could do no wrong for a long time here on this show because he wrote 95's Pride and Prejudice.
He did.
Which is the gold standard for adaptations, especially by this show's standards. But then we watched more of his stuff and we realized, like, oh, it's not like everything this guy does is amazing.
He's fallible like any human.
Yeah. So we've watched more than 3, but there are 3 that I can remember off the top of my head, and we reacted to all 3 a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Pride and Prejudice. Oh my God, it's amazing.
A+, 100%.
A Room with a View.
Not good.
Didn't care for it. Emma.
Good.
It's fine. Middle of the road. So if we had only seen any one of these, we might have a very interesting idea of who Andrew Davies is as a writer.
Yes, it's interesting to explore someone's like entire catalog.
This one, where does it sit for you?
Well, like it can't possibly be his masterpiece. You know what I mean? His masterpiece was the 1995 Pride and Prejudice, obviously. Right. But it's It's very good.
I think it's right under it.
Yeah.
It's like between that and Emma. This is
Like,
absolutely better
this
than A
is-
Room with a View,
this
and
is a
it's better
man-
than Emma.
This is a man who's challenging himself, who I think rose to the challenge.
hmm
I mean, I think the thing that I'm not going to say that it does that Pride and Prejudice doesn't do, because I think Pride and Prejudice does have a point of view and sort of an authorly tone.
hmm
Man, he did a great job, and you could really see the kinds of things that he was interested in doing and talking about, and the kinds of things he was like, I am not going to do that.
hmm
Because any part of the original plot where like the plot depends on a miscommunication or a misunderstanding or someone not talking to someone when they could just talk to them, and instead like goes away and does something different, he's not having it. Like, he is coming right out and being like, no, in my script, people talk to each other, and I'm going to do a Les Mis and show you that you can have the plot of Les Mis and have it be just as great when people are direct and communicative with each other. I swear that must have been like written up above his computer as he was writing. It is so direct. He's like, I don't have time to F around. This is a 1,400 page book that I'm trying to do in 6 hours. People have got to talk to each other. I don't know about you. Like, I think that's super modern. I think plots that involve misunderstanding, I personally don't like.
I know you don't.
And I also think it is really overdone and really like kind of a cop-out. So it was something I really appreciated. It was very clear in the script to me that that's what he was trying to do. I don't know if you asked him if he would say like, yes, that is specifically my intention, but I just appreciated it. And I thought it was an excellent script.
This one in particular, especially because it's our last one, I kind of do want to just work our way through it in order.
Yes, I'd like to do that.
Okay. Let me just talk about some of the people who are in it. Dominic West is our Jean Valjean. David Oyelowo is our Javert. Fantine is Lily Collins. Cosette is Ellie Bamber. Marius is Josh O'Connor, who's also in that Emma that we just watched.
Yeah, he's also in The Crown, which is funny because Dominic West is now playing the older Prince Charles, but he played like the younger, like 20s Prince Charles, which I just think is funny.
Yeah. My boy Johnny Flynn, it plays Felix Tholomyès.
Very small part.
But boy, is he great.
He's great.
And by great, I mean he's fucking awful.
Yeah,
And you hate him,
yeah,
and he's the
worst.
worst person in the world. Olivia Colman is Madame Thénardier.
Yeah.
Adil Akhtar is Thénardier.
Man, he's good.
Bishop Muriel is Derek Jacobi. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
David Bradley is Gilles Normand. He's perfect casting, but he's not the person I would have thought of.
Yeah.
For people, if you don't know David Bradley, he's Filch in the Harry Potter movies. Like he's a hey, it's that guy.
He's the guy in Hot Fuzz that hits the bomb and says it's deactivated.
Which is great.
So great.
Fauchelevent does not appear in this. I just want to throw that out there.
Fauchelevent.
No. Eponine is Erin Kellyman, who's so good. There's a thing we're going to talk about with her.
Yeah, just
and just in terms of casting.
I love the casting of the
We'll talk about
Thénardier
it.
family is just so amazing. Anyway, we'll talk about it in a minute.
We'll talk about it, and there's a couple other characters that will come up kind of throughout. So we start at the beginning with a pre-roll. We begin at the Battle of Waterloo.
Yeah, there's like Battle of Waterloo. We've got red text. Gives a little backstory. 1815, Napoleon, Battle of Waterloo, blah, blah, blah. Everybody got that.
You know what? It's great. It's actually kind of helpful. And it really brought up something to me that I think goes along with what you were talking about with Andrew Davies, and it'll come up a lot. It feels like he made the decision, you know what? I bet a lot of people watching this have some experience with Les Mis.
Yeah.
Whether they know the musical or some other version or the Liam people have something they're expecting. But I'm not going to aim for them. I'm going to aim for the people that have never seen or read anything before.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell a new version of the story for a new audience. And hopefully, people who already know the story in some capacity are going to join me for the ride.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel like it's referencing other versions. It feels like just a new version of the story.
Yeah.
And it makes the decision to just give you Waterloo at the very beginning because Waterloo is in the book and it's important, and we're going to give you some historical context.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing it doesn't do is it doesn't lead with Valjean. Valjean's not in it for a minute.
Yeah.
Like, what we start with is Thénardier rescuing Marius's father.
Quote unquote rescuing.
Trying to pick his pocket, thinking he's dead. But as far as he's concerned, rescuing him, saving his life on the field at Waterloo. Then we get Marius's whole backstory right away.
So it's like what they do is we start with Thénardier, Then the story jumps to the Baron Pontmercy.
Yeah.
Then the story jumps to Gilles Normand with this little kid Marius.
Can I talk about little kid Marys just for a hot second?
In a second.
Okay.
Because then the story after that immediately jumps to Fantine and her friends, and then we go to a prison colony.
Yeah.
And there's Valjean.
And it's chronological. So Fantine actually walks past like baby Marius and his on the street with his dad there, like having just been kicked out of the house, like showing where we are in time. It's quite clever.
Go ahead and talk about baby Marius.
So they have Marius as a child, but like as two different ages. They have like little baby Marius, like 3-year-old Marius, and then they have like, I don't know, 7-year-old Marius.
Sure.
And as the 7-year-old, he's asked to like go see his dad and he's dying or whatever. First of all, I was confused about whether the two kids were brothers because they were very alike. Very alike. But they bore a striking resemblance to our child Calvin. And so like I was dying anytime either of them were on screen. Like they just had his like curly hair and his nose and his cute little face. So anytime they were on screen, like I couldn't even concentrate on what was happening because I was just dying because they were so cute and I loved them.
But can I talk about it from a story perspective?
Sure.
Because I was right there with you because it was very, very cute. This is one of those things where I'm just telling it for a new audience. I mentioned this earlier. You have a couple of different things you can do with Marius as a character.
Yeah.
One thing you can do is introduce him in the middle of the story the way Hugo does, but really give him some depth and really show his backstory and help you empathize with him. A number of versions do that. You can introduce him in the middle and do none of that work. So I don't really care about him, except for the fact that Cosette loves him. A bunch of versions do that. You have a third option, which is introduce him earlier, which no other version did. And it works so well. It works so well that I feel like if Hugo saw this, he would think, you know what? It actually would have been really easy for me to introduce him when he was a kid. I probably should have done that.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing in that I feel that way about.
Yeah.
I do think the book stands above basically every version that we saw. It is an incredible book. But that's just one little thing there where I feel like, you know what? I think Davies was onto something that Hugo might have missed out on.
It also seems incredibly well researched, like as far as the history and what was happening and what life would have been like. So we have a ton of backstory for Fantine. We see her meeting Felix, and we see all her friends and them meeting these guys and going on this like trip and like having this meal. And the time passes, like she's had a baby, and
they do kind of a fake out with the baby where there is a baby present, but you don't know it's her baby.
Yeah,
and then after he leaves, you find out it is
her baby.
Yeah.
But it's a good long time that we spend with this woman, and I think it is so. I truly think it's important. Like if we're supposed to care about her, we have to know what she's been through. When I saw her walk on screen and she was so pretty and she had this like long hair, I was like, they are gonna fuck this girl up.
Yeah.
Oh my god. And they did. It was graphic.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get to Valjean, right? And you had this immediate reaction because we had talked previously about like when you talk about the galleys, you're like, if they're rowing, if they're doing boom, 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 row you bastards, it's not accurate. It's not accurate. And you were like, God damn it, Andrew Davies, because they're on a boat. They shouldn't be on a boat. And we realized it was not the quote unquote like galleys.
Not a galley ship.
It's not a galley ship. They were just being transported to they keep calling them the prison hulks.
It's
that was the phrase they used constantly throughout this.
It's so specific that I feel like it has to be accurate.
Yeah.
This is the thing about this version is I can't speak to its accuracy. I can speak to its plausibility.
Yeah.
Because it was almost universally plausible.
Yeah. And they used a lot of the language from the book too that Hugo spends a lot of time on. Like he spends so much time talking about what grisettes are, like these young girls of Paris, like who have these jobs as seamstresses. And at one point Fantine's friend says to her, like, we're not fine ladies, like we're grisettes, like this is what we do, like don't lose your heart to this guy, don't do anything stupid. And they also talk about gamines, which is what gamins, which is what gamine I guess would be feminine, gamins, which is like these little boys running around, which Gavroche is a gamin, and they talk about that too in this version. So like, I mean, listen, if Andrew Davies can do anything, he can take a book and adapt it. Do you know what I mean? Like as you said before, he's not really doing anything in tribute to any of the previous versions. Like he went back to the book, and it's very clear that he did.
Can I talk about Valjean for a second?
Yeah.
McNulty looks bad.
He looks
in
rough.
This version.
Oh, he's rough.
Because that's the thing. We just talked about with Depardieu. He looks exactly the same as Valjean as he does as the mayor. except his hair's longer.
Yeah.
That's it. In this one, though, man, he looks really different when he gets his shit together.
Oh, yeah.
Because he is a fucking mess in
He's
prison.
a mess. I mean, he's like so dirty and like he's red. Like he's got this wound. Like it seems like it's constantly bleeding. So he's like covered in blood. And so he meets Derek Jacobi, who's beautifully cast as Bishop Muriel. And I love that they left in the thing, which is like, how do you know I'm not going to murder you? And the response is like, well, how do you know I'm not? And he doesn't have anything to say to that. And I just love that little exchange.
But still, he took the silver.
Oh, God.
Took my... Anyway, do you want to skip ahead?
Yeah. So we've got Bishop Muriel. He's great. We've got the Grisettes. We've got these. I just love Grandpapa. Like has a bunch of friends in this one.
Oh, Gilles Normand.
Gilles Normand is like, look at these old ghouls. They've all got their like powdered wigs and their powdered faces, and they've dressed Marius up like them. It's a bit grotesque actually, because they like bring him in and he's all like dressed like them, and then like the news comes in that like his father's died, and he's supposed to like not react to that, even though he's like this poor little kid. But we have to talk about like the one novel character in this is Nicolette.
She is a fucking treasure, and I love her.
Yeah.
It's an actress named Emma Fielding. So one of the things that's established in the book is that Gilles Normand always has a cook.
Yes.
And he hires a number of them over the years, but he tells them all that they're going to be called Nicolette.
Yeah.
We don't know why, but it gets him off. This one, though, we get one Nicolette the entire time. And we see her
put upon.
We see her over the course of years. Her reactions every single time Gilles Normand says a goddamn thing are amazing.
Yeah. And she's clearly just staying with him because she loves Marius dearly, like this little kid.
Like, if the story was just Marius's story, she'd be the moral center.
Yes.
It's not just Marius's story, so she's just delightful when she's there. But if you haven't seen it, just watch her.
Yeah, she doesn't even have many lines in some scenes, but you just are like drawn to her because her facial expressions are so amazing.
She's incredible. Can I skip forward a little bit? So, we get to Montreuil-sur-Mer.
Yeah, Fantine is there. She's doing her best.
Yeah, she gets the job. Can I just talk about my note? Oh, Valjean, what have you done?
Yeah.
Valjean's the one that fires her.
Yeah.
We talked about in the Liam Neeson version that he's a little more involved. It wasn't that he just didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
In this one, she gets in trouble in front of the forewoman and Valjean, and they find out about the kid, and he goes, "You lied to me, you're fired." Now, in his defense, Javert just confronted him right before this, so he is in a bad way, and he is focused on other stuff, but he fires her.
Yeah, which, again, I just feel like Andrew Davies is like, there will be no miscommunication in my version. We're not going to do that. We're just going to have people have conflicts directly.
And this brings up something that I love, and I love to talk about. I think I mentioned it earlier. You can do this badly if you're adapting Les Mis, because Valjean, as a character, has his arc at the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
He's done. He's grown as a character. Who he is as a character is pretty much cemented. He is a good character who's very capable, wants to keep his life a secret, and always does the right thing. Even when he occasionally is like, no, I don't want to do the right thing, he does the right thing. It's never surprising. He can be a little boring if you do it badly.
Yeah.
This version, though, Valjean is having his arc throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
You know what it made me think of? It made me think of people who live with emotional trauma. Because the thing about emotional trauma, like as portrayed in media, is it's not like you just go to therapy and you're fine. Emotional trauma is something you live with.
Right.
He is the person he is. He is the person, like Hugo said, he is the person that prison made him, and he is always working against being that person the entire time.
Yes, he's like has to actively do it.
And he fucks up a lot. He drops the ball constantly. He's constantly doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing, which is a very human quality.
Yeah.
But he then works to make it better and live with that trauma. We'll come back to some of the things he does because we're kind of going through the plot in order. This is one of the things that's a perfect example of that, where he does the bad thing and then later he has to atone for it. And it makes his desire to help Cosette and keep this promise to Fantine so much more important, because we know as an audience that he feels so fucking guilty about what he did.
Because he did it.
Because he did it.
Because he did it. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So Fantine is fired. She's out in the street. And like the thing about this Fantine, especially because we get to spend so much time with her, is she's constantly being given good, perfect advice that she does not take. Like her friend at the beginning is like, just don't sleep with this guy. Like, not even don't fall in love with him, don't go out with him. She's like, don't get pregnant. And she does. And she's like, and then after she's got the baby, she's like, don't lose your heart to him. Like, don't depend on him. And she does. So in this, so that she can't read and write, as in many versions. She's got this guy that like is the public letter writer that's been writing all her letters, which is how she kind of gets found out, because the stupid forewoman is awful.
She is a busybody.
She's a busybody. She goes to fucking Montfermeil to see the inn and like talk to the Thénardiers about Cosette. It is just for no reason. And then when Valjean tells her to go later to go get Cosette, she just doesn't go, and he's almost like murders her. So Fantine, she kind of had like, it's not that they have a friendship, it's just that like, because he's really grumpy.
They have a relationship
and awful, and he's actually awful. But like, I think he genuinely doesn't. He kind of wants the best for her. He has a soft spot in his heart for her.
Get to the thing he says.
He tells her, you lost your job. You're very pretty. You should go be a prostitute. And she's like, no, I don't want to do that. And he's like, okay, that is not the right decision for you right now. And so she goes through all these trials. She sells her hair. She sells her teeth. It is awful.
I mean, because now we have good special effects.
Yeah.
So
like,
it looks like her teeth are gone.
Her teeth are gone. She even has the little lisp when her teeth are gone. Like,
it's just great attention. It's weird for me to say that it's great attention to detail, because it's kind of horrifying.
Yeah.
But like, it's great attention to detail.
The scene when he pulls her teeth out is just awful.
Yeah.
So then she goes back to Mr. Letter Writer, and she's like, I think I'm gonna have to become a prostitute. And he's like, you did this in the wrong order. You should have, I think he says, you should have gone on the game when you still had your pretty hair and your pretty teeth. And like, he's not wrong.
He's just an asshole.
He's just an asshole. So, she's lost everything. Like, it's just, and so then there's this, that big scene where these guys attack her and it's awful, and they stuff snow down her dress, and she has this whole conversation with them, and they're being so nasty to her, and Javert is there and he sees the whole thing. And like, the one thing I really loved in this version is that she had when she worked in the factory, she had some friends that she always sat with, and clearly what happens is one of the friends is out there walking and sees all of this go on, and she runs and gets Monsieur Madeleine. Like, hey, there's trouble. It's my friend Fantine. Remember that girl you fired? Like, you better come. There's trouble in the street. And so we haven't really talked about Javert. What did you think of the Javert?
I thought David Oyelowo was like no Javert I had seen before.
Yes.
Not just for the obvious reason.
Yes.
His performance was incredibly good. And I really loved him against Dominic West. And it did a thing that challenged me a little bit. Because, we started at the beginning by talking about the 1978 version where they made it so personal between Javert and Valjean, but it was kind of a detriment to their stories.
Yeah.
This one did a thing that I wasn't expecting, which is it made it really personal, but it still understood their characters.
Yeah.
It added to the story.
Yeah.
I thought. Because what was so personal to them was, the thing that made it so personal to Javert about getting Valjean was because he believes in the law that much.
Yeah.
And he can't let this guy get away from him, not because of Valjean, but because he can't let anyone get away.
Yeah.
And that's what made it so personal for him.
Yeah, like this Javert, they made it very clear. This Javert, even in that like gap of 10 years, he never stops looking for him for one day.
Right.
I mean, what it is Ahab, right? It's Ahab and the whale. He is so obsessed with him that he drives himself crazy, because you get to the point where there's, all of his like subordinates are saying to him like, sir, there's these revolutionaries, there's chaos in the streets, like the police don't have control. We really need to be focusing on this. And he's like, yes, Valjean is out there. He's leading these revolutionaries. If we can just find him, he's their leader. And they're like, he's not, though. Like, you need to understand.
And Javert says the line must be drawn here, this far, no further, et cetera, et cetera.
But it makes it so interesting because when he goes to the barricades, he's going to look for Valjean. He thinks Valjean is their leader. Somewhere in the back in his brain, he's convinced himself Valjean is their leader. Whereas in every other version, and I think in the book, he goes there because it's a different mission, right? Like he's supposed to infiltrate them and find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so in those versions, when Valjean walks in, it's a big surprise. Like he recognizes him, but it's a surprise. In this version, when Valjean walks in, it's like, I knew it. Like the guy he's been looking for, he has thought about him every day and he's standing in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
It's an extremely intense performance, I think.
Agreed. So let's go back for a second. Let's talk about the Thénardiers, because we haven't really talked about these two characters, Adil Akhtar and Olivia Colman.
Yeah.
Let's talk about casting for a second, because we mentioned this. Clearly, one of the things that was done in casting is that Erin Kellyman was cast as Eponine.
Yes.
I'm not saying they cast her so they cast these other two actors, but they clearly make choices in terms of their character costuming.
Yeah. And they're just their design, yeah.
Right? To make this all make sense, because Erin Kellyman is multiracial. And so she's got like darker skin.
But she's bright red. She's a very striking woman.
Incredibly striking. And bright red hair. So we have Thénardier and Madame Thénardier, and Thénardier is Adil Akhtar, who's he's British.
Yeah.
His father was Pakistani. His mother is Kenyan.
Okay.
So he's already, there's a lot of
he's
stuff going on.
multiracial himself.
But he has darker skin.
Yeah.
And then we have Olivia Colman,
Yes.
who is, I mean, let's put aside the fact that she's just a glorious light in this awful dark world we live in.
She's so good.
You know,
my God.
I asked you at one point, I feel like one of the things that has to be clear is like when you have Madame Thénardier, you've got to find someone who can just be a raging bitch the entire time. But I always assume with every single one of them, they're probably one of the nicest people to the child actors.
I have to believe it. Yeah.
I have to believe it also. And I feel like Olivia Colman has to be the nicest of all of the Madame Thénardiers.
Yeah. But so they have these two girls, these little girls who are cast as these multiracial girls, the older one of whom, Eponine, they've given this red hair, and Olivia Colman has bright red hair. So they
in this show.
So they've cast the family to support the appearance of this. It's just done really beautifully. Like it's just beautiful casting, and they're all so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're all so great. The whole society is just sort of beautifully multiracial. Everyone is living together. Like it is a very visually cool and interesting place to live. Not just actors who aren't white, which I think is maybe one of the first times in any of these versions we've seen like literally anyone who's not white.
Mm-hmm.
But even actors of all sorts of disability statuses. I noticed Fantine's nanny or landlord, the one who's watching the baby. I was like, she looks really familiar, and she's sort of unusual looking. Who is that? It's Liz Carr.
Mm-hmm.
She does a disability podcast that I used to listen to called the Ouch Podcast, and her co-host is another actor who was a thalidomide survivor, so he doesn't have arms. But anyway, the two of them are a pair that I'm familiar with because I used to listen to this podcast. So I was like, wait, that face, where do I know that face?
Yeah.
Oh, she's in a movie? That's cool. Just like a lot of very interesting looking people, which makes the production very visually interesting to look at, which I really appreciated.
But I mean, I don't think we can speak highly enough of Akhtar and Colman.
Oh my God, he's so the two of them are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I love everything about their performances. The two of them are so great together. He's funny, but he's scary.
Yeah.
Like he's terrifying. And you see him physically abuse her. And so you see her taking it out on the kids, and you're like, oh, okay, there's the cycle of abuse. You know, like he's terrifying. His wife is scared of him. His kids are scared of him. Everyone's scared of him, but he's also hilarious.
You know who's not scared of him?
Valjean?
Jean Valjean is not scared of him.
You know who else is not scared of him? Javert is not scared of him.
No, not even a little. So Valjean collects Cosette.
Yeah.
And they go to Paris.
Yeah.
And of course, all of this is still happening alongside Mary's story. And then let's skip ahead.
Yeah.
This goes back to what you were talking about with Davies, because it skips ahead. Marius finds out all about his father and who he really was from Mabeuf. Who we get Donald Sumter playing Mabeuf. And he's so good.
Because this is the only version that does the thing that's in the book. Sometimes I'm not confident when I say this is the only version that does this. This is the only version that has the thing about his Nicolette takes him to church every Sunday when he's a kid, and his father watches him from behind the pillar and weeps because he loves his son so much, but he's not allowed to be with him.
Mm-hmm. So that's in this one.
Yeah.
So we see Marius as he's older, and he's left Gilles-Normand at this point. He's destitute, and he's in the Luxembourg Gardens, and he sees Cosette and Valjean.
Yes.
And there's this thing where in the book where Valjean drops a handkerchief and Marius picks it up thinking that it must be hers.
Yeah.
And it's got the initials UF on it, which actually stand for Ultime Fauchelevent.
Which is also not his name, but
But
that's fine.
he assumes that her name must be Ursula.
And he goes chapters and chapters thinking her name is Ursula.
This doesn't do the entire thing, but it gets the handkerchief and the introductions out of the way immediately.
Yeah.
The very first time he sees her there, like, it gets dropped. He goes up to return it. She says, "Oh, thank you. It's actually my father's." Says, "Oh, my name's Marius. What's your name?" She says, "Cosette." Immediately they know each other's names.
Great.
Because it doesn't actually affect the story if they know each other's names. Them being together is still not easy.
Yeah.
You have a lot of conflict, but at least that miscommunication is out of the way.
The plot is almost never dependent on people miscommunicating or not talking to each other. And it just becomes such a delight to watch.
Then we get the scene where the Thénardiers have lured Valjean and Cosette to them, and they're going to try to cheat them out of a whole bunch of money. And we've seen it done every single way, where Thénardier recognizes Valjean, but Valjean doesn't recognize him. We've seen versions where they both recognize each other, but Cosette doesn't recognize Thénardier, and some where Madame Thénardier recognizes Cosette, but all these different ones. This is one where they go into the house, Thénardier clocks Valjean and Cosette immediately. Valjean clocks Thénardier immediately. Cosette clocks Thénardier immediately.
Yeah.
Everyone clearly knows what is going on, which is great because then all of the words coming out of everybody's mouth are full of subtext and not text.
Yes.
Because they're still having the conversation as if they don't know.
Yeah, and Cosette is like, get out, get out, get out. And it's amazing. I mean, Cosette, can we talk about Cosette for a second?
I mean, I was going to say, like, Cosette is active in a way that was really fun.
She's active in a way that's really fun. She knows she knows who they are from the beginning. She is actively like, no, don't go talk to them. Like, they're bad. Like, she and Eponine have a previous relationship. So when Eponine is like hanging around the house, she's like, I hate you. Then at the end, they give Cosette such an active role. Like, she becomes Detective Cosette, essentially, is what happens. So like Thénardier does the thing where he comes to the house and he says, I am Baron Thénard, and Cosette is like, you are not. And Cosette is the one that figures out it was her dad carrying Marius through the she's like, it was you dumb shit. Like, she's so over it. Like, she instantly understands what's going on. And then she's like, they can't find Valjean. She's like, I know where he is. They take the carriage, they go to Dean. Like, she is in charge of what is happening. For the last like 20 minutes of the movie, she becomes Detective Cosette. It is very similar actually to the end of the new Rebecca.
Yeah.
Where she becomes Detective No Name and is like leading the charge to
Detective
try to
Mrs. De Winter.
Detective Mrs. De Winter, and just to try to figure out what's happening.
Yeah. She just becomes an active character, and it's really
she's
satisfying.
Very active character. It's very satisfying.
One weak spot that I'm
Yes.
going to throw out there about this script. There's a lot of exposition, and it's pretty weak. So here's just one example. I don't want to go into every example because it happens pretty consistently. All the guys are at the cafe, all the revolutionaries, and, you know, we have to introduce Lamarck in all of these. Because, as we all know, only one man, and that's Lamarck, speaks for the people here below. Like, you have to get that information out in some way. And a lot of them do it, I think, in a really nice, kind of deft way. This one, I don't think handles it well at all. Because, you know, Enjolras is talking about how Lamarck is going to die, or has died. And I think, what is it, Grantaire or something like that, goes like, why should we care about Lamarck? And then we get this little educational moment where he's
Right.
But everyone would know about Lamarck.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point I said to you, like, say what you will about Andrew Davies. I don't think anyone would say he's like the master of subtle exposition.
The exposition is not subtle
Yeah.
throughout all of this, which did bum me out a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite
but
part.
I did like the dudes in this. Enjolras was great. Grantaire was really good. Courfeyrac who's Marius's like closest friend was good.
They're not as good as 82. 82 was amazing.
Yeah, no, that was amazing.
But they're very good.
Mabeuf is in it. He's at the barricades. He does get shot. You know, Eponine gets shot at the barricades. Gavroche gets shot. The little kid that they've got playing Gavroche is very adorable.
Can I go back for a second because you're already at the barricades?
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Thénardier has a prison break. And it's in the book because Thénardier gets arrested after his whole trap. And in the book, it's like in the rain and he's crawling across the rooftops and there's all this stuff going on. It's very long. It takes a really long time for it to get done. We kind of see it in a couple of versions. This one, though, does a really smart thing, which is, you know, clearly they said, what's important? What's important is that he is captured and then he escapes. it's less important how. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be at night in the rain. So he does the classic thing where he pretends to be sick, pretends to die, and they sneak him out on a stretcher, and then he gets up and runs away. And the whole scene takes like 2 minutes.
And Javert is there, and he's like, "What? You let him escape?" And there's like, "No, he died." He's like, "He did not die." Like they find the stretcher and everything. It's so funny.
And then he becomes one of the wet bandits down in the sewer.
They do the wet bandits.
And then we meet him later.
Again, as I say before, sometimes I'm not super confident in saying this is the only version that did this. I'm very confident in what I'm about to say. This is the only version that acknowledges when they come out of the sewers, they smell like literal shit. Like
Yes.
they are disgusting and covered in turds. And they're like, you smell bad and need to not be here. It's so good.
Can I mention another fun thing?
Yes.
That I like that I think is just so smart. The timeline is Valjean tells Cosette, we're going to move. We're going to go to England. Eponine doesn't want Marius to know where they're going.
Yeah.
Because she wants Marius to herself. That's her whole thing. In this one, she thwarts a burglary. She thwarts like an armed robbery attempt, just like in the show. She stops her dad and his guys from breaking into the house and trying to kill Valjean and rob Cosette. But they do say they're going to come back the next day. Her plan is she goes to Valjean, actively communicates with Valjean, hey, you know who I am. You need to get out of here because my dad's going to come back and they're going to try to kill you tomorrow night. And Valjean, of course, is like, shit, we got to get the fuck out of here.
Well, the funny thing is, first he says, why should I listen to you? And she's like, because it's my dad. Like, why would I say that, why would I say this about my dad if it wasn't true? And he's like, yes, you're right.
It makes perfect sense for Valjean to listen to this. Also, it kind of makes perfect sense for her to be telling this. But we as an audience know the entire reason she's doing this is because she wants him and Cosette to get out of there so Marius won't know who they are, where they are,
right.
And she can have him all to herself.
Right.
And she handles this, usually the way she handles this is a little more passive. Like Cosette leaves a note, she sees it and takes it. It's much more like just preventing something from happening. This makes her more active. She's actively causing them to leave.
And then she does leave a note, which she does take. I mean, Eponine is she does such a great job in this. Like the script is so strong for her. Like they make her a very active character. She's like kind of trying to seduce Marius. And at one point they like kind of go to like, I don't know, an 1830s version of a strip club, and like she's there and she's like, hey, Marius. And he asks her, how do you survive in this terrible world that we live in? And she's like, listen, I mean, you know how I do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I do what I need to do. It's fine.
Yeah.
So she's great. Azelma is in this. I just love Azelma. She's just always kind of there. They do the whole Thénardier trap where Valjean like takes the poker and burns his arm, and like it's the kind of scene where you could watch it 6 times and watch a different person's face like every single time, but like the best reaction is Olivia Colman in the background just like just screaming. It's so good. Everyone in this is so good. Like I feel like there's not a bad performance in this.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I only have 3 other quick things
to
talk about. What else do you have?
I think we've been through all of my notes.
Okay, so let me try to get through these really quickly. There's a great line where I believe it's Enjolras talking to everybody saying, we fight for the wretched of the earth.
Yes.
Which is real nice because clearly, if this were in French, he would be saying
Les Misérables.
Les Misérables, which is real good. I liked having that.
Mais oui, bien sûr.
I want to talk about, I talked before about Valjean actually having to work the entire time and having an arc.
Yeah.
When Valjean goes to the barricade, again, it's like it's being written for people who don't know the story. Because if you don't know the story, it seems pretty clear that Valjean is going to the barricade to make sure that Marius dies.
Yes.
So that he cannot be with Cosette. It's very clear. It's so clear that even later he says to Marius, I'm not even sure what I was going to do. I was almost going to kill you. But then when he's there, he sees Marius risk his life to get Gavroche, which doesn't save his life, but he sees him do something really selfless, and he just goes, oh, fuck. I guess I have to save this kid. But we see him make that decision because he's an interesting character who's having a full arc over the course of the entire story.
Right.
And the thing that I loved is that the big thing, if I had to identify what his arc actually is, everything he has done up until saving Marius was selfish.
Mm-hmm.
He stole from the bishop. for himself.
Yeah.
He stole from Petit Gervais for himself. He turned himself around and became a rich man for himself. He saved Cosette because he felt so terrible about what he did to Fantine. He wasn't doing it for Cosette, he was doing it for himself.
Yeah.
Saving Marius is actively working against his own self-interest because what he wants is to grow old with Cosette.
Yes.
He even tells her that. Still not, it's not, you love her as a father.
Yeah,
it's
no,
not
no, it's
that.
not that. It's not
he
that.
clearly does love her as a father in this one, but he's selfish the entire time. And so when he makes that decision to save Marius, he's had his full arc.
Yes.
And it's just so rewarding after all of these versions. It was so great to finally get him to having a full story arc. I loved it. I only had one other little thing, and then I think we can end this amazing story.
Yeah. Oh, I just had one other quick thing.
What's that?
The way they use the French language in this, I loved so much. It was so natural and seamless. Anytime there's like people talking in the background or like a soldier shouting orders or like some convicts talking, it's all in French. And then they integrated French into the main dialogue in such a way that like you sort of knew they were speaking French, but like it was very seamless. Like they said bonjour and merci. You know what I mean? Like they used French words, kind of like the way they use Chinese in Firefly. I don't know if that's a deep cut or not, but like it was just sort of integrated into the way that people speak. And I thought it was a great way of hearing the French language, even though this is an English language production.
I mean, it's exactly what I was talking about before in terms of like, I'm not saying the story was realistic. I'm saying it was plausible.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that makes it so plausible.
Yeah, I liked it.
I was talking about the end.
Yeah.
Because he dies.
He does die.
He dies in Dean, which is not in the story,
Yeah.
but that's fine. They go see him, and his death is very sad, and he looks a mess.
Yeah. Well, you were like, are we meant to understand that there is sort of a direct correlation?
yeah.
Like something in the sewers made him sick. Like he was swallowing sewer water. And I was like, I don't know. I still don't really know if that was like the implication, but he does die like 6 weeks later. Like it's not like a couple years later or anything like that.
He dies a few months later because it's 6 weeks after the wedding.
Yeah.
But the wedding happened a few months after he saved
of course,
Marius. The very end, we get our big ending. He dies. Cosette and Marius are together. One of the things we do get in this that we didn't really mention is that in the original story, Gavroche has these two other little kids that he's taking care of, who are in other versions a little bit. They were actually they were in the Liam Neeson one. We didn't even mention it. They're in the anime. We didn't really mention it.
Yeah,
they're in this one, and the very last shot of the entire show is we're back in Paris, seeing all of the, Les Misérables across the street, and there's those two kids looking real rough.
just begging on the street.
And just begging, and then we fade to black and we go to the
So
credits.
it's like nothing has changed, nothing has gotten better. And it is a way of implying that the big quote, like these things will never change unless someone changes them, without actually doing the quote.
Yeah. If these things never change, a story like that can never be useless.
There it is. There it is. Yeah.
And I love that it ended on that.
Yeah,
I love it goes so much further than just saying, well, Valjean doesn't get a happy ending. It's like, no, the world doesn't get a happy ending. That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
And oh my God, that's not the last thing I have to say. We have to talk about Javert's suicide.
Oh God. Okay. Yes, we do.
And this is probably a perfect thing to end on because I think it does directly bridge us to episode 3.
Yeah.
Strap in, because I'm going to be making some wild assumptions. When Javert throws himself off the bridge, and there's so many amazing details we're leaving out, he does this thing that I'm so happy about because you see him make up his mind to do it. He's not doing the thing where he's clearly made up his mind a long time ago, and he's just walking slowly and then dumps himself off. Like, he as a character is struggling in that moment.
Yeah.
His struggle at the edge of the bridge takes, less than 30 seconds of screen time, it feels like. But he has this moment where he's going through some shit, and he looks up, searching for something, and he doesn't find what he's looking for, and then he makes up his mind, and he jumps off the bridge.
Because the stars are black and cold.
Because the stars are black and cold.
And I stare into the void to a world that cannot hold.
I'll escape now from that world,
from the world of Jean Valjean.
There is nowhere I can turn. There is no way to go. And we'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
And then we'll pick that up. Because I swear to God, I could be wrong. I would bet money, though, that what he's doing in that moment, someone had to say, that whole part of the song?
Where the stars are black and cold, do that.
Do that. Do everything there, but keep it all inside.
Keep it all inside.
Do that whole thing, but do it in 10 seconds because it's exactly what happens in the song.
Yeah. And I will say, too, I always love it when there is something in an adaptation that the screenwriter found delight in the original text that I also had been delighted by, that is clearly textual. And in this case, it's that Andrew Davies clearly loved the idea that Javert had left this long list of instructions to his superiors, but they were all so mundane. It was like, point one, the prisoners are getting sick because they have to do this thing. So, it's costing us money. So don't do that. Point two, the brooms need changing in room 3. Point 3, it's just this mundane list of things that he wants to make sure people do after he's dead, but it is nothing. And that's what's playing in Javert's voice as he's walking down to the river and like doing all this stuff. You hear a voiceover of him reading off this list of that he's left behind, which I just love.
So we're done.
We're done
with episode number 2. I want to rank them all, but I think we should do that in episode 3. And you know what? We'll do the quadrants in episode 3
that
too.
makes sense.
I want to
That makes
let everyone move on to the next episode of
on.
whatever show they're listening to.
Yeah.
Well, this has been Adapt or Perish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adaptorperishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 3 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated. Third, we're on Patreon. We talked about our bonus show before. It's been really fun, and we have our patron-only Slack community that's been great. All the details are at patreon.com/adaptcast.
Bonsoir.
We'll see you in episode 3.